Available to adults 21 or older.
Eastern Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com. Thank you /GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and Friday on the 28th of April. We're going to be joined by the governor from 11 to noon here at the library. And then on the same day, Jim, it's going to be back to back. The mayor of Boston will be with us from 12 to 1, also, as I said, on April 28th. Hello.
Hey there. So I want to explain our programming decisions to you at the top of the show. Obviously, this has potential to be a major day in world history. As you just heard on the national news, our deranged war criminal in waiting president posted this morning, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. We decided that in light of the fact that things change pretty rapidly, we would wait to discuss this till John King from CNN joins us at noon. And then for the last half hour of the show, we will discuss your reaction to this president's statements about Iran. Following that, we'll take your calls at 12:30. So that will happen a little bit later in the show. But first, Governor Healey and the Massachusetts legislature want to follow in Australia's footsteps and ban social media use for teens under a certain age. I should say the House. The Senate has not spoken on this yet. Healey proposed it in his State of the Commonwealth address, and now the House is voting on a bill, I think tomorrow, that would ban the sites for anyone under 14 years of age. Legislative leaders say it will be among the most restrictive policies in America. As you know, Australia's ban applies to anyone under 16. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Stop scrolling. Use your phone for the purpose it was meant for, to call or text us at 877-301-8970. Is the government banning our kids' access to harmful apps too blunt an instrument? Instead, should it be left to parents and government's role being to educate people, young people, about the dangers of social media and how to use it appropriately, and what exactly constitutes social media? X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. How should we be regulating our kids' use of social media, knowing the federal government is going to do virtually nothing about it? Is what the government of Massachusetts is proposing to do the right thing, or is it misguided? Our number is 877-301-8970. I also should have mentioned, included in whatever comes out of the legislature on this will be the bill we've discussed quite often, including with the Attorney General, who sponsored part of this, a bell-to-bell ban on cell phone use in schools. There seems to be virtual unanimity. That's a good idea. If you want to call about that, too, the number is 877-301-8970. What do you think about the outright ban on social media use for kids under 14?
Well, you know, I'm not a technological wizard, Jim, as you may know.
I didn't know that.
So I'm concerned because places like Australia that have tried this before, it's not gone very well. Somehow these clever little kids manage to get around these bans.
70% of kids under 16.
Yeah, and they're blaming Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, et cetera, for not trying hard enough to keep the kids off the site. But I do think it's a big problem for young kids in terms of bullying, in terms of their attention span, in terms of not doing their work or socializing with their friends. You know, kids talk about hours a day spent on their phones, scrolling up and down. So I think we've got to do something. I'm not sure if this is the right thing, but I think it's obviously, I think stopping this is really important for young children. And I also think, as you said before, the phone thing is a no-brainer. They can't have phones in the schools.
It should be. Well, I have to say, I'm with you, unfortunately. Unfortunately, meaning I'm not 100% sure what the right thing to do is either. My sense is this is the direction they're taking because a more appropriate thing, again, like intense training for kids about how to interact with social media is a much more difficult thing. But one, apparently based on the Australia example that you talked about, 7 out of 10 kids have gotten around it. That's a problem.
Right.
2, there's some constitutional concerns a lot of people voice. We're going to discuss that with Judge Gertner in about a half hour about whether or not it passes constitutional muster. But they have to do something. Also, that age gating, you know, the ability to exclude someone based on their age is apparently a very difficult thing to do. So even if this is, not even if, this is clearly well-intended, I'm just not sure this kind of a blunt instrument is a solution to the problem. Our number is 877-301-8970. Apparently the phones were working for a few minutes. They are now. Are they? Yes, they are. So give us a buzz, 877-301-8970.
This reminds me somewhat of the whole thing about when people are very old and they shouldn't be driving anymore.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, the parents of the 80 and 90-year-olds have to get in big fights with their parents over giving up their
Kids
car
of the 80.
keys.
Most parents of 80 and 90-year-olds are not with us anymore.
No, I'm sorry, the children
Yes,
of the 80
exactly.
and 90-year-olds have to get in fights with their parents. This sort of is the same thing because it's very hard to, I mean, so many parents now, and mom's working, dad's working, they're not, it's very hard to do this with your children. And I think this would be, one good thing about it was taking it out of mom and dad's
Yeah, but all
hands.
the kids are circumventing it. It's the first thing you said.
Well,
it's a
they
great
are.
policy, except for the fact that every kid knows how to get around it.
Yeah,
so,
but the Australians are going to go to court because they think Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, are not trying very hard to enact these bans.
well, since you are a
giving their best
technological
effort.
expert, Marjorie, as we know, what is a social media site?
Well, actually,
Exactly.
less ones they find, but supposedly it's supposed to be an all social media ban, and I think it's just not very well. It's not thought out to be effective enough at the moment. So maybe the Massachusetts legislature can do what others have failed to do in Australia. The Brits don't like this either. But there are Florida, Arkansas, California, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Ohio, Nebraska, and Tennessee, as this story from the Herald today says, have all enacted similar legislation.
Did you read the story about what the speaker said right before the House proposed to vote on this tomorrow?
Not the right
He yelled
time.
out, "How do you get online?" So talk about not technological experts.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's well-intended, and we rarely think anything on Beacon Hill is well-intended. I'm sure it's well-intended. I just think it's an easy non-solution to the problem if Australia is an example. You may feel differently out there. The answer, I think a lot of desperate people, particularly parents of young people, will take anything. And even if it's imperfect, if it's a half a loaf, or in the case of Australia, a third of a loaf, they'll take a third of a loaf rather than none at all.
Here's Sue from Westport. It says, my daughter's 23. She really wishes there were a ban on social media when she was still
That's a good answer.
in high school. And I think that's one of the other problems. You know, if you got to belong and got to be in the group when you're a teenager, and you feel left out of it if you're the only one who's not getting these is on the same websites as all your friends. Anyway, 877-301-8970.
Here's a text from Donald J. Trump. Truth Social is allowed. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It was very kind of him to text in the middle of this thing here. Let's go to Chuck.
Chuck
I'm
in
sorry.
Brighton. Hi, Chuck. Thank you for calling.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. So
course.
to preface my, I'm sorry, let me make sure I'm off of my speaker.
No, we're good.
Okay, good. To preface my comment is I think social media is poison, and I am addicted to that poison. So, it's kind of hypocritical for me to say this, but, I'm actually against this law for two main reasons. The first was something that was brought to my attention when I listened to an On Point episode about this about a year ago, is that social media does actually serve a purpose for, an effective purpose for underprivileged children, minority children, children who are coming from abusive households. It's a way for them to connect to communities that they might never, ever have access to and potentially save lives. The second thing, which is much more personally affects me, is what you guys just touched on, is how do they enforce this? Does this mean that every time I sign into one of these sites, do I have to give my ID to sign into these sites? And it creates this whole other quagmire of surveillance and privacy issues, which is, there's this big push down in the South in Texas to make more age restrictions for internet use on things like pornography and stuff like that. And the main argument against that is the same thing. It creates a surveillance network. We already have so many problems with privacy data, all that stuff. It's very worrisome.
Can I tell you, Chuck, your arguments against this are about 3,000 times better than ours. And
Hold on for one second.
contributing
Hold on for
that.
1 second, though, Chuck. The arguments about how kids that are.
This is true, but what Jim just said is that these places are congregations for like-minded people, and I just see it's a idealistic utopian idea that you're coming up with,
Yeah.
but I think it's not practical, unfortunately.
Chuck, we appreciate your call. It was great. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for the call. Here are a couple of
Here's a
texts.
librarian in the teen room at Waltham who agrees with Chuck. They don't know how to use a web browser. They find their information now through the apps. I think they probably could learn since they're very technologically agile young people, but in any case.
Here's Jamie in New Hampshire texting. It's important that parents are able to decide for themselves what books their kids read, what gender-affirming care they should pursue, how many children they may want or not want, and how their children should engage with social media. I understand it's a huge problem, but it would be a continuation of taking rights away from parents. Another anonymous text, well, that one wasn't anonymous. Parenting is hard, and this is just one more example of how parenting is so vital. Why not flip phones only for kids until they're 18? Social media hurts kids, period. Just like alcohol and betting, our society needs to do the right thing, even if it means picking up where the parents fall short.
Well,
so I'm not clear if they're in favor of government doing this or if they do want it left to parents, as difficult as
that
it
was
is.
the argument in that verdict against Meta, that their video streaming service and YouTube and all these things are addictive and lead to mental health distress. And Meta has to pay $4.2 million, which isn't really that much considering how much they have, for punitive damages, and YouTube has to pay $1.8 million. Their argument is that the websites are intentionally keeping you addicted, just like tobacco companies do, or gambling sites do, or any of these other addictive activities.
How about mandating that there be part of the curriculum statewide for younger kids about social media use, the dangers of social media use, how to maneuver through the platforms without putting yourself in that spot? I mean, that's just a lot more difficult.
They did that with sex ed, Jim.
No, they did not do sex ed.
Yes, they did.
No.
They had the cops come in to elementary schools and do those programs.
No, do you know what this legislature did with sex ed when it mandated? It
the cops were with drugs. Excuse me, the cops were with drugs.
It mandated a curriculum a year or two ago only for districts that were already teaching sex ed, which was not the problem. The problem were all the districts that were not teaching sex ed.
But my point is that there were a lot of districts that were teaching sex ed, and I don't think it necessarily dissuaded anybody. They might have been a little bit more informed, but I don't think it dissuaded people.
You speaking from personal experience?
I had Miss Crispo, the living fossil. That's who taught us sex ed. And she said, don't take a bath after your father or your brother because a rogue sperm may make you pregnant. So I was a little bit out of it. Ron from Seabrook, thank you for calling.
Hello, Ron.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Your anonymous texter a moment ago touched on a possible focus on the device itself. I think as long as the young folks have these phones right there in their possession, it's like giving them a bottle of whiskey and saying, don't open it. You can carry it around, but don't open it. So if the device they were allowed to have was the restriction, I think that might be the
Well, I don't think the legislature could do that, but a parent could attempt to do it. I'm not saying they could pull it off. I don't think the legislature can tell you what you can. Well, I guess they can. Well, I take that back. They can tell you can't buy cigarettes, right? And they can't buy alcohol. So maybe you're right, Ron. Maybe they could prescribe what you could buy vis-a-vis a phone and what they could not. That's a possibility. Thanks, Ron.
Kids get around the cigarette and alcohol age limits too. It's one of the texters says, whenever my kid wants to use social media, I bribe her by giving her a cigarette. I like that.
Here's a good anonymous texter. When our 20-something kids were teens, we blocked the internet through our router after and before certain times of day. Then our 14-year-old learned in 30 seconds through YouTube videos how to fake an IP address and bypass parental controls, which still are useless.
That's a great point.
That's a great point as to why the ban is, as I said, a blunt instrument that's probably not going to work. The much harder task is teaching kids what's a responsible thing and what the dangers are. And when you mention the sex ed, obviously it's imperfect. But a blunt instrument is really imperfect and just allows probably politicians to say, they've solved a problem, which they have not.
Yep, Jim, as you may know, around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, their crisis in terms of the schools, teachers are being laid off, programs are being shortchanged because they're out of money. And they'd be out of more money if voters approve the income tax reduction in Massachusetts.
That's a very good point.
So I'm not sure they're going to be adding any new curricula on this anytime
Well, the reason
soon.
they don't add curriculum is only part about money. It's also this insane notion that if individual districts are not doing something, we on the state level can't impose things that make total sense. And again, that's really done. Anonymous text says, maybe we should just blow ourselves back to the Stone Age. Or as Trump said, apparently Trump thinks there's Stone Ages.
He does.
I only knew of one.
I thought there was one. I could be wrong. Maybe there was another and I missed it.
Okay, let's go to Chris in Shrewsbury. You're next. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. I'm a longtime listener.
Thank you.
KK, and first-time caller.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to get back to what you were wondering about what parents might be thinking with those text and prompts. I think that a lot of us are looking for some governmental guidance because sometimes I don't know what the right thing to do is with my kids. I mean, I can stop them from looking at things or accessing things.
Hey, Chris, can you do me a favor, especially since it's your first call after so long? The connection is crappy. We're going to put you on hold for 1 second, take another call, move to another room or drive around wherever you are, and we'll get back to you in about a minute. Okay, don't go away. Davita in Vermont, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey there, it used to be Davita from Harvard, and I am calling in the late 90s, late 2000s.
We have the same problem, Davita.
You know what?
Plus, we just hung up on the prior caller.
Maybe it's us.
It's going well.
You think
maybe.
we have the problem
Davita,
here?
try
GBH?
again. I mean, keep talking and see if it works any better. Obviously not. It's like an SNL routine, these phone calls. I mean, we apologize to Davita. I apologize to the guy who's been listening to us since we were at TKK, and we just hung up on him, or he hung up on us.
Yeah, he's gone.
Please call back, callers, if we
I think maybe
cut you
we
off.
do have a problem with the phones. But anyway, a texter makes the point that we should be going after the algorithms and not the content, and that is the addiction, the way that algorithms are so finely designed. And, people keep saying that the only people that can use websites are boomers. I mean, boomers are so inept. I'm a boomer. I'm inept. I think if I can use a website, I don't think it's that hard.
No,
for
I
a
don't think they're
12-year-old.
saying that young people can't use a website. I
Right.
think they're saying they don't use websites.
Well, they don't use websites because they're on the social media sites.
Yeah.
It's certainly not difficult to switch to a website. Anyway, 877-301-8970. I don't know
Phones
if
are
I should
apparently
say that
not
because the
working.
phones are not working very
I
well.
am really, particularly to the caller who, again, has
I
been
know,
listening for
I
20
know.
years and finally makes a call. And Stephen in Quincy.
We're going to give it another try.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, how we doing, everybody out there in Radio Land?
This one's working. Hi, welcome.
Welcome. So I was just saying that, who is social media really designed for, if not the younger people? Facebook, when it first came out, was for college students, and then it kind of evolved into an everybody thing. And look at what a problem it is now with scams and ads and bad things in general. So I was saying that if the apps had more people kind of checking the content for the kids or younger people, then that'd be a lot better. Sure, if an 8-year-old is on social media apps, I don't really see them looking up bad things or bullying each other. They're just going to look up goofy, fun kid stuff. But, that's just kind of how I'm looking at it. I don't think another rule is going to help us out.
Stephen, thanks for your perspective. We appreciate it.
Yeah. We should really go back to what Facebook was initially meant for, rating the women on college campus, how good looking they were. That's
Well, that was the
showing.
Harvard thing
That's
when
the Harvard
Zuckerberg
thing.
was at Harvard, right?
Zuckerberg was trying to get a date. It wasn't easy.
An anonymous, I'm just nervous about taking a call, but you give us guidance back in Brighton and we'll decide.
Here's another good one. I think we need to start with parents coming to terms with our own phone addictions. Our children have been observing us scrolling from day one. What do
I
we
agree with
expect?
that. That's
and
a
it's so
wonderful point.
funny when you see babies. I got a couple of little grandchildren, and boy, very early on. I mean, less than a year old, they're picking up on the phone thing, and not only because they see their parents on it, but because of the sounds and the lights and all that kind of stuff. They and they can figure out how to work it. swipe.
What do you mean, how to work it? Does the parent give the phone?
No, I think it's almost like instinctual. They are able to grab the phone and swipe around the phone when they're in diapers.
Let's go to Bridget in
Somerville. Thank you for calling.
Fingers crossed. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
I'm just calling with a not important point that I'm an archaeologist, and it is okay to say there are multiple Stone Ages.
Oh, it is?
That's why you're calling?
There are. Yeah.
Great. Go ahead. Tell us.
Not that I agree with Trump on anything
That's fine.
or think he knows.
You don't have to apologize. Go ahead, Bridget.
Fill us in, Bridget.
There are different phases of what archaeologists would consider the Stone Age that occurred in different regions at different time periods. So there's lots of different terms for this, like the lower Paleolithic, the Middle Stone Age.
Great.
So you could say there are multiple.
So hold on. So this is when they had more stones or fewer stones or bigger stones? I mean, what's the deal, Bridget?
No,
what is the Stone Age even?
Where
what does it mean?
Far enough in the past that the vast majority of artifacts we find are stone tools because they preserve the best, and things like baskets have degraded over time.
Okay.
Bridget, can I tell you how much I love that you called about this?
I love
serious.
it too.
It's great.
So
Thank you for your call.
I didn't know really what the Stone Age was, but now I know from Bridget. So
it's not
the Stone Age
is.
Stone Age is defined by using stones for tools, apparently. Did you know that, Jim?
No, I guess I sort of do
that.
now. Can I remind my people, at noon, we're going to talk about this threat from Trump that is only 8.5 hours away with John King, and then we're going to talk to you at the bottom of the hour, get your thoughts on a whole civilization dying tonight. A whole civilization dying tonight, according to Donald Trump.
Well, we hope that doesn't happen, obviously. Coming up after this next break, we're going to talk with Trenni Casey from NBC Sports Boston. We're going to talk about these High Rocks races, which I'd never even heard of. And some of the stuff from the March Madness. Trenni Casey is next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Béla Fleck. The 19-time Grammy Award winner has taken the banjo from bluegrass into jazz, classical, and far beyond, building one of the most inventive careers in American music. Now, ahead of his show at the Cabot, he joins us to talk about collaboration, musical curiosity, and the latest chapter in a career defined by restless reinvention. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
And Schneider Electric, providing energy technology and sustainability advisory services to help the Boston Athletic Association shape more sustainable events for athletes, fans, and the community. Learn more at se.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library Wednesday and Friday, and as Marjorie said, on April 28th, we have the governor for an hour at 11 o'clock, and immediately after her, the mayor of Boston for an hour, 12 to 1. That's April 28th. Joined now at the library by Trenni Casey. Trenni, of course, is an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Welcome, Trenni. Hi.
I love when I find out live that I've been bumped from my spot.
That's right.
On the 28th, we will not be talking to Trenni because we have the governor and the mayor.
Maybe we can squeeze in a little break in between.
It's going to be local politics heavy that day. But tell us about these High Rocks fitness races. I'd never heard of them, and I've never heard of this whole change in them.
So they have become all the rage. I have a friend who owns a fitness studio locally called My Stride. It started as a running studio. You went in and it was like spin classes on treadmills. And it's since evolved into like running and strength. Now, in the last year, they've started High Rocks specific classes, training programs, and they have teams that enter these competitions. And when I talk to her about like why and like why do all of your athletes like it? These are all former marathoners, ultra marathoners, runners, and they love it because one, you still run, and so you have that cardio, but strength has become such a big part of everybody's sort of fitness routine, understanding the importance of it in terms of longevity. So you can strength train and run train, but the best thing they like most about it, you do it in front of a crowd. So rather than like when you run like a local 5K or a 10K and there's like sparse people, people that are sort of sparsely scattered across the course, this is in an arena. You feel like a real like pro athlete where there's this like camaraderie in it. It's a different type of challenge. But most importantly, I think people love, like, it's an adrenaline rush to have all of these people cheering and screaming and encouraging you.
It's only been around like a decade, and already they say there are 15,000 gyms where there's training going on. Yep. I don't understand what exactly. It's HYROX, by the way. Yes. What exactly do you do?
So you do, it's 1 kilometer of running interspersed with various, different types of strength conditioning types of exercises. So one of them is a wall, I think it's called wall ball or wall toss. So you take a medicine ball and you have to push it against the wall and catch it, push it against the wall and catch it. This is the one exercise that keeps me from wanting to do it. It's called a burpee broad jump.
What is that?
Burpee. Oh, what?
There's nothing I hate more on planet Earth than burpees. And so you do a burpee, so you drop down into like a push-up position, and then you push yourself up, and then you have to like wide stance, broad jump, and you have to do it X amount of times. And then sometimes you have to row. Sometimes it's like, I don't know if there's I forget what all the exercises are.
Sled pulls.
Oh, sled pulls. So have you ever seen at the gym? There's it does kind of look like a weird sled, but there's weights in the middle, and then there's big pulls on it, and you push the sled forward. Like that's a sled drag or a sled pull. So it's like more of a total body workout, but it's done, and you can do it individually. You can do it in teams. My friend Sarah, the other day we were running, and she was like, I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing this high rocks, and I want a partner. And I was like, Sean will kill me if I sign up for something again. When I'm always complaining that I like overextend myself. Sean's my husband. I was like, but I'll think about it because I kind of want to do it. And so that way you do it. So like if say you have, I don't know what the time is, I'm guessing here because I've never done one of these before. But say you have, an hour to complete something, or, you have X amount. I don't think it's time-wise. I think it's X amount of exercises and reps at each exercise with the kilometer in between. If you have a 2-person, or you can do a relay. So the 2-person is that each of you switch off and do every single discipline. But the reps are cut in half, right? So if we were doing wall ball and we had to do 100 reps, I would do 50 and Sarah would do 50. So maybe I would do 20 and then Sarah would do 20. And that way you can do it faster and you get a little bit more like rest in between. And then the relay is you find people basically, I think, who it's similar to like if you do a relay in a triathlon. You just put your fastest swimmer on the swimming, you put your fastest cyclist on the cycling, you put your fastest runner on the running. In high rocks, I think you find people who you pick where their strengths lie, whether it's like the running or the strength
you
portion.
Do this in front of a crowd. Does this mean like you're in
they had
an athletic field or a track?
So I think they had, and please somebody write in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I think it was maybe at like the New Balance athletic complex last time it was here.
Out in Brighton?
I think so. I might be wrong about that though. It might have also been maybe at the convention center, maybe over by by the West End, but that convention center.
You could do it inside there.
But it's all done inside. So also that I think is the other thing that people like about it. Like you train for months for a marathon, right? And it's not like you can do a 5K every weekend if you want. You're not going to trash your body. But for a marathon, it's kind of like one shot is all you've got. So if it's going to be 80 degrees or if it's a day like today and you're running the Boston Marathon and the rain is relentless, like in 2018,
horrible.
Like it ruins your chance to do your best. Is altered by what the weather is. It's really weather dependent. This is all in a controlled environment. So it's if you're ready or you're not.
So you're doing it with your friend or you're not?
I don't know.
Yes, you are. You know more about it than the High Rocks people know about it. Let us know.
Well, that's because I read the article. You guys, assigned me an article. I read it.
Okay, so I have been waiting for ages to trash Gino Auriemma, the most successful coach
you don't like this
in women's college basketball. And the reason, Trenni and I've had this discussion about 1,000 times, I think women should be coaching women. And I have to say, I watched the whole game when South Carolina beat Ariema's team, the UConn team, which was pretty satisfying in and of itself. I love Dawn Staley, who's the coach of South Carolina. And then Gino Auriemma at the end of the game showed what a bore he is and a horrible loser. He loses the game. He refuses. He gets in a fight with Staley, a verbal fight at the end of the game, which was on television. Doesn't apologize, which he only does in a statement the next day, and he cooks up this totally phony excuse that she allegedly refused to shake his hand before the game, as is the tradition. He's just
even though there's
cheap,
video
low-rent
evidence.
What?
There's video evidence of the two of them shaking hands before the game.
Right. He said, but they didn't do it at the time.
Yes.
It's all BS.
Basically,
kind of
like
thing.
she didn't do it a second time, which maybe she thought because she did it the first time she was caught up. Like, whatever the reason, I don't think it was intentional.
And by the way, at the end of the thing, South Carolina goes to the final. They get crushed by UCLA, also coached by a woman. It was terrific. So what's your reaction to this?
I mean, to me, this is just a man who has had control and success for a really long time in a sport, and he is losing his not his platform, but he's losing his standing. He is no longer the most feared, the most successful women's college basketball coach. You now have, and he had run-ins also with like Muffet McGraw.
Muffet McGraw
from Notre Dame.
That's a great name.
Yeah, Muffet McGraw was the head coach for a long time of the University of Notre Dame. The great, and now I'm forgetting
Pat Summit.
Thank you, Pat Summit at Tennessee. So like he had gotten into it. I will say this. Listen, unlike those women, though, I think those women were, while not reserved, a little bit more reserved. Dawn Staley, she's Philly tough.
She is fabulous.
She's Philly tough, and she. And honestly, Jim, sometimes I don't like the way she carries herself. Sometimes I think she has some Gino Auriemma in her, and I think we excuse it because she's a woman coaching a women's sport. But like, she sometimes also can be a sore loser and throw temper tantrums and argue with officials and whatnot. But like, I think it bothers him more. Like, what bothers you more than someone who's kind of like you? And that's like you butt heads. And I think they're both kind of like each other. They're both hyper competitive. They've had a ton of success, and she is pushing his success. Like, she stopped his bid to have another undefeated season and national title. And rather than just shake her hand and say, hey, great job, great game. Like I was outcoached today, and do it with grace and humility. He acted like, I said, I likened it to like the 2-year-old in Target throwing a temper tantrum because they can't get what they want.
Did you watch either of the women's games?
No.
Semifinals of the final. Well, there were 3 games.
So I watched
obviously.
the UConn. I did watch UConn, South Carolina. We weren't really around. Sunday was, or Saturday. Wait, no, yeah, it was Sunday. Sunday
was UCLA
was
versus
Easter,
South Carolina.
and we were at my in-laws, and we just kind of were walking around. I think we had this Red Sox game on, which I don't know why, they're terrible. And we had the Red Sox game on in the background. So I didn't see the national title game, but I did see that it was such a blowout that I didn't really. I was fine with not watching it, but the South Carolina-UConn game was fabulous, and UConn kind of kept getting close, and then South Carolina would put on the pressure, and UConn would get close, and South Carolina would go on a run. But it was a fabulous. It was, I think, probably more likely that those were the two best teams.
Neither of which ended up winning the national championship.
No, actually, UCLA is the best
national
team.
champion.
Okay, tell us
about the best matchup. I should say, not the best team's best matchup.
Tell us about this first female official in the NFL, Robin DiLorenzo.
Well, she wasn't the first. She was the third female official in the NFL. One of the first female officials in the NFL, and she's suing the league and the officials union for what she calls like mistreatment. I think I don't know if there's also a discrimination charge in there.
Yes, gender discrimination, harassment, and retaliation.
Yes, and so she claims that as a female official in the NFL, that she was treated drastically differently than her male counterparts, that she was rated on a tougher grading scale, that when she had mistakes, they tried to humiliate her and send her to like a low-level college sort of camp for referees, for officials. Which, she had done her time. She refereed at the high school level and then low college and then bigger college. Like, that's how men get there as well. But the ones that stuck out to me were the intimidation of other officials, talking down to her, making an example of her in a really public way when she was on an all-male crew. And the other one, too, is them telling her to hide her ponytail. but people couldn't see, basically so that people couldn't see that she was a woman. Like, what's the big deal if your ponytail's hanging out of the back of your hat, you know?
Wow.
And so the NFL has said that there is nothing here, there isn't a case, but it's worth watching because it does make you wonder. The NFL sometimes has an official problem. Like, they've got some really bad officials. And why aren't there more women? And does this shine a light on maybe unfair practices in how they recruit who gets to officiate NFL games? How they're treated once they're there? Do they make it harder for women to do this? Like, I'm curious, like, through discovery and depositions, like, what really kind of comes out and what ends up coming to light? Or do they just quietly settle with her so that things don't become
How many women officials are there now?
I don't, honestly, Jim, I wish I knew that question. There's not many. I can tell you that. It's not like, I feel like in the NBA, and we talk about this a lot, that the NBA is just a more progressive league. I feel like NBA female officials are, like, I don't know, I feel like you see them all the time running up and down the court. I think there's only one female umpire in baseball, and I don't even know if she's full-time, which to me is wild because if you've been paying attention to baseball this season and the ABS, which is the automatic ball strike system that they implemented, some of these guys who are long-time, umpires behind the plate, I mean, they're getting it wrong. Not by, sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you challenged that.
You know what this is, by the way?
0.2.
This new system where a computer,
it's robots.
Yeah,
this ABS thing, and if and a batter or a catcher can challenge the call by the ump.
Yes, but sometimes it is an egregious call. Like, I saw one the other day that was 2.2 inches off the plate, and the umpire called it a strike. And good on the hitter for tapping his helmet and being like, that is not a strike.
Is this the one that's a new AI thing?
It's not AI. It's like a automated. It's like a computer.
Okay.
So they have a camera similar to a replay system, right?
Okay.
But this is not video.
So I thought they were going to have AI umpires. Didn't I read that? They're going to have AI umpires pretty soon.
How humiliated. By the way, if you're the umpire behind home plate, I saw one the other day, I don't know what team, were 2 pitches in a row. Oh, no. This was incredible. The umpire calls a strike. The batter, what do you do? Tap your hat?
You tap your helmet,
or
yeah. So a batter, pitcher, or catcher can challenge.
Even better. Not only does he challenge, because it was 3-2, 3 balls, 2 strikes.
Yep.
Now the umpire says you struck out. Not only does the guy challenge, he starts walking to first base.
That was the Red Sox.
Oh, was it
Wilson
acknowledging
Contreras.
Essentially
Yeah,
right
like,
away? You're
yes.
wrong.
Yeah.
How humiliating is that?
And in fairness, that one wasn't super egregious. I think that one, because I worked the game on Friday, and they put it up on the scoreboard, and then they put it up on the broadcast. So it's like a graphic, and you can see the strike zone, and it will show you how far out of the strike zone. So basically, how big of a mistake was it? And that one actually wasn't egregious.
Can you
I think
imagine
it was
if they
like,
had an ABS for us, and every time we made a mistake, they announced it on the air?
Oh my gosh!
No,
there would be like a buzzer happening like all the time.
That would be bad.
Speaking of that game, I was at opening day.
Oh, you were?
And I'm eating
La-di-da.
I was.
Did you eat the lobster poutine?
Gave us sick. Couldn't get them. My daughter's girlfriend went to try to. We couldn't find it with lobster and.
I mean, can I be honest?
Clam.
It sounds kind of gross.
It sounds disgusting, but you want to try it. And it's only $39 for French fries. It's really quite a deal.
Did you? I know how much you love the Henrys, by the way. Did you watch the game at all last night?
No.
The last 2 days in a row at Fenway, they have started chanting "Sell the team,
I heard
sell
that,
the team." Because
but can I
so
get back to this for a
angry.
second?
Oh no!
On opening day,
Oh, I love it. I think they should have sold the team.
They
They don't care anymore.
They announced Bill Buckner and the other 1986 players who were, I guess, alive or available from that team that obviously lost in the World Series.
It's only 1986 alive.
Well, whatever. I don't mean, but obviously some of them. I'm guessing some of them are not. And all of a sudden, I hear I'm eating a sausage, of course, and I hear unbelievably horrible boos. I look up, and they're booing Healy and Wu.
Okay, so
and they're not just booing; they are booing.
So I also noticed that.
Oh my God!
I was at the game, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, why are they?" But then I read, I think it was Jen McCaffrey from The Athletic. She's covered the team for a really long time. Great Red Sox writer. I believe in her next day story, she wrote, in the grand tradition of Fenway Park, they booed politicians. So apparently any politician
it was gross.
that comes, they boo. I don't know why. I don't understand it. But I heard it, and I was like, who in the world could they possibly be booing like this? And I felt bad for Maura and...
Well, I also,
Mayor
good
Wu.
Little boo I'm fine with.
Governor
It was
Healy.
really merciless kind of thing. We'll talk to, actually, Healy and Wu were both here on the same day on the 28th.
They
we'll ask them
booed
about
Tom and Nino?
I don't know. I don't.
I don't think he was at the game last week.
Not last week,
Oh,
Jim. But
I'm
I wonder
sorry.
when during his 20-year tenure, he was a fairly popular mayor.
Trenni,
Well,
it's good to see you.
Was
Thank
a
you so
popular
much,
mayor
Trenni
too.
Casey. Thanks.
Okay. We've been speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and BPR contributor. Thank you very much, Trenni. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Make getting ready for the day the most productive part of your day.
From the GBH Newsroom in Boston, I'm Mark Hurst.
Get the local news you need to know.
Traffic and transit updates.
And weather with meteorologist Dave Epstein.
The gusty wind in the afternoon, partly cloudy.
When you're getting ready, get ready with us.
Time to round up the week with our incisive politics reporter, Adam Riley.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing the full range of commercial and residential Velux skylight products. More information about their installation process and consultations can be scheduled at mmskylights.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As I've said, we're back here Wednesday and Friday this week, but April 28th, a governor from 11 to 12, mayor from noon to 1, April 28th. For the latest iteration of On the Docket, we're joined now via Zoom by retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. Judge Gertner is a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, Judge. So this is maybe a little premature because the bill hasn't passed yet, but there's a proposal up in the State House to do what a lot of other states have done around the country, which is to ban social media for kids 14 and under. 15 and 16-year-olds, I guess, they need parental permission. But some legal scholars have raised First Amendment issues. So I know we haven't got the exact details here in Massachusetts, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, first, as a parent, I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great thing to do. I want to understand the First Amendment issues more directly because banning access, for example, you ban access to pornography for students. I mean, for kids, that for adolescents, that's something we do. And if there are First Amendment issues, they're outbalanced by the concerns of child development. And I wonder if that would be the same thing here. I'd like to look more carefully at the First Amendment issues. It doesn't make sense to me that they would, forgive the verb, trump concerns about adolescent development.
By the way, isn't there a potential First Amendment issue for an adult, someone over 14, who I assume, I don't know how it works, but I assume if you have to prove you're over 14 to be able to use social media, should this thing become law, that means all of us would have to do it too. So
yeah, it wouldn't be a problem.
I didn't mean in my particular, you know what I mean, Judge Gertner.
I know what you mean, but I mean, I think, the social media companies will have a coronary because, of course, this is where their major audience is. But I do think that it's not unusual for there to be different regulations for kids than there are for adults. We see that all over the place. So I, for one, would not be concerned about such a bar, but I'd want to look at the First Amendment issues that people are raising.
We'll check back with you should it pass. So there were reports the other day that Samuel Alito last month was taken to Walter Reed, some sort of emergency, which provoked discussion about whether the oldest two justices, who also happen to be the two most conservative justices, Alito and Thomas, one or both, will be urged to resign before the November elections so that Trump has a clearer path to confirm their replacements, for fear that even if the Democrats don't take over the Senate, if the margin is narrowed from, let's say, 53 to 51, there may be the Murkowskis or the Collins or others who may not vote for a Trump nominee. What's your, I mean, this obviously arose after the fact around someone you knew, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What's your take on this whole notion?
Well, let me sort of say from 80,000 feet up, it's a sad state of affairs that the highest court in the land should be the subject of this kind of maneuvering, right and left. Other countries have Supreme Court selection processes that are much more rational, much more, much more carefully done than we have allowed ours to become. So that's one thing. But I've heard that rumor. And I mean, the net effect of it would be they would hope, embed a very, very conservative majority, or at least those conservative judges in the Supreme Court for a much longer period of time than would otherwise be the case. But I think you have to say, for a court that is as powerful as the Supreme Court, this is really, we've allowed things to get to a point which is really preposterous for both sides. And no other Supreme Court is like this. The selections are made by bipartisan committees. Selections are made by other sort of more neutral figures. This has now become a game, and it's a game that, frankly, the Democrats have lost over and over again. What with the Mitch McConnell holding up Merrick Garland's hearings, even. So it's a game the Democrats have lost. I don't doubt that they will begin to play it where they in power. It's just not a good way to select Supreme Court judges.
By the way, there are two things. One, I can't think of, Jamie, if you could check, what's the name of Michael Kirk's brilliant film about Mitch McConnell pledging from moment that Robert Bork was rejected to take over the Supreme Court, and how he worked relentlessly for 30 plus years to get there, and he obviously succeeded. We've talked to you a lot about your position on the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court, or whatever it was called, and we've talked about recommendations that you supported, another local guy, Larry Tribe, supported. Was there any discussion about amending the Constitution to provide for a fair selection process? We've never discussed that with you.
Well, the Constitution doesn't have to be amended to make some of the important changes. I mean, you can't. The only amendment would be that a Supreme Court justice has to be confirmed by the Senate.
Exactly. Right.
The issue is what's the route to get to the Senate? What's the route? And in Trump 1, the route was Federalist Society. Tell me who you propose. In Trump 2. And then, although I disagree with the Federalist Society in many respects, the people that went up through that pipeline were unquestionably qualified, had substantial credentials, went to, did well in school, etc. Trump has now abandoned that route. And if Emil Beauvais, who was his, lawyer, who's now on the Third Circuit, is any indication, he's going to just pick zealots and loyalists who may or may not be qualified. You'll see Aline Haba as a nominee if he has the votes. I mean, when you think about it. So this is sort of a caricature even of Trump 1. And that has to change. That doesn't require a constitutional amendment to deal with the selection process. That could require, could be statutes, could be laws that would say, here's the pool from which judges should be selected. Here's how they need to get into that pool, et cetera. A bipartisan group in Congress could do that. That doesn't require an amendment.
I know you say it's a sorry state of affairs that we even have to worry about this kind of jockeying, but you knew Bader Ginsburg, correct?
Yes.
What was your perspective at the time? I mean, there's a story, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, that Obama had lunch with Ginsburg, and because Obama is not, let's put it this way, not quite as direct as Donald Trump, that Bader Ginsburg left the lunch not understanding what the purpose of the lunch was, which was theoretically to urge her to step down so that he could pick a replacement in timely fashion. What did you think about her sticking it out despite illness and age when she was there?
It was a mistake. There was no question about it. And it so breaks my heart that her legacy is to some degree, in some quarters, sullied by, by the fact that she tried to stick it out. It didn't take Barack Obama to raise that issue with her. When I first became a professor at Harvard, Ginsburg was going around from school to school and feted by everyone. And it was almost like a farewell victory tour. Only at the end of that, she decided not to step down. So it didn't take a genius to realize that that's something she ought to have done. And it's too bad that she didn't. The White House Commission and the Brennan Center, and people are trying to come up with a more rational, both retirement, term limit, and selection process. And, given the importance of the Supreme Court, that really is critical. That's the next step.
Jamie looked up the name of the Frontline documentary, which is terrific. It's called McConnell, the GOP, and the Court. Frontline did it. You can get all those things at the PBS website if you want to see it. It's really good. So I have another hypothetical here, but you know a lot about the law, Judge Gertner. So I figured you'd be the person to ask about this. President Trump has been talking about blowing up bridges and power plants in Iran, and there was some debate whether or not that would be a war crime because it's aimed at civilians. Some people say yes, some people say no. Well, now he's talking about, he issued this new threat and for tonight, saying a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Of course, we hope it won't happen because he often changes his mind, and we're hoping he changes his mind, obviously, about this. The Iranians are now telling young children to go out and stand around the power plants as like a human shield so that the United States won't blow them up. But threatening a whole civilization, is that a crime? I think it's got to be, and you wonder what the military will
Marjorie,
do.
before we even get to that, I mean, I'm a news junkie. I love this program. I watch almost all channels. I read 4 newspapers a day. It has to be said that even discussing this in rational terms is wrong. This is not even in the zone of rationality. His comments, the other day, the praise be Allah. I mean, he is behaving like a lunatic.
He is.
And when we dignify the lunacy by having is it a crime? It is lunatic. Even if it were not a war crime, which I'm told it is and should be, this is lunacy to talk about another country this way. I mean, if we ever hope to have a normal relationship with Iran or any Muslim country in the galaxy, this is lunacy. And the notion that we should be captive to a lunatic is mind-boggling. So
but we are. Nobody's going to. Who's going to stop him? I don't know. What I was saying before, is General Kane going to stop him? Or the people in the military going to stop him? Pete Hegseth has fired any number of people at the top ends of the military. So I don't know if there's anybody left that will stand up to the president.
Well, I mean, apropos of Jim's questions before, it says something profound about how this could have happened. How could it have happened that both we reelected this lunatic, but more significantly that he's been able to do what he's done. Now, part of it is exploiting national security issues, which is in fact an area in which presidential power has grown substantially since the Cold War. But who can stand up to him? If you listen to Senator Kelly, soldiers can agree, can determine that this is an illegal order. Maybe Congress will grow a spine. Who knows? Maybe there's someone left inside the civil service, the foreign policy establishment who will stand up to him. But again, we are completely, there were stories about Hitler's last days when he was sort of mumbling to himself and borderline psychotic. I'm not drawing an analogy there right now, but this is lunacy. What he is saying and how he is saying it and what he plans to do is not even in the zone.
Can we let's stay on this for a minute, since we're a little extra legal in this discussion.
Want to mention the bunny rabbit?
Well, no, we're not. We mention the bunny rabbit a little bit later in the show. I mean, I'm going to quote my favorite pundit. That would be me, who has been saying for months that the fact that journalists are not talking about how seriously mentally ill this president is a problem. You just said a variation on a theme, and people know that our favorite media critic is Margaret Sullivan. Margaret Sullivan wrote was in The Guardian?
So
a brilliant piece.
So did Heather Cox Richardson, the historian from Boston College.
Yes.
She
Brilliant
wrote it
piece
too.
this
Who
morning.
described him as cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, talking about the fact that those journalists who are not talking about this in the way you did a second ago are failing their consumers. Having said that, and I agree with every word you said, and then some. Let me just say my take on this whole war crime issue, because I think we've all been watching cable TV, that if an individual bridge or a power plant is not only used by civilians or serves civilians, but in some way serves the military, then it's a close question. It is not a close question when you threaten every single bridge and every power plant in a country. There is no scholar who would say that is not a war crime.
And the very threat is a war crime.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps someone should sit down in the Oval Office and say, you know, the Nobel Prize is at risk if you destroy a civilization.
But you know, I'm so glad you said it's so lunacy, because I feel like, shouldn't we be doing something? I mean, here he is.
Yeah,
threatening
25th Amendment.
To blow
That's
up
what we should be
the
doing.
whole civilization. I would imagine the people in Iran, it would be analogous if Vladimir Putin got up today and said, well, at 12 o'clock tonight, he's going to blow up the United States with a nuclear weapon, which he could do.
And I mean, that's another issue, which is that what he is doing with respect to Iran legitimizes what Putin is doing with respect to
totally
exactly.
I mean, I never believed that Americans' moral superiority, such as it was, mattered to other countries, but it does to a degree. I mean, if we basically wipe away all of the moral constraints, even though we imperfectly followed them, then we're really in anarchy. We're really in a very different place. And I know that the international law experts say that if a particular bridge is used for both civilian and military purposes, then it is arguably not a war crime. But when you indiscriminately talk about bombing
everyone, of course,
single bridge, I think you're in a different zone. So who can stop him? My answer is that anybody near him has to. There has to be either a 25th Amendment discussion, which is Vance has to mobilize 2/3.
Yeah, he's in Hungary, though, campaigning for the dictator there. I should say Viktor Orban today. But go ahead.
I mean, military people have to decide whether these are illegal orders. Congress has to grow a spine. We were in the streets a week ago. We need to be in the streets again.
Amen.
And everyone has to vote in every way, vote in November, although even November is too late. By the time we get to the midterm elections, who knows what he will have done to the Middle East.
You're singing our tune there, Judge Gertner. Thanks for your time.
Judge
As
Gertner,
always,
thank
we
you
really
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with retired federal judge Gertner, a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you for tuning in. 3 o'clock this afternoon is the fabulous 413 on NEPM, and I hope you can tune into them. We're going to continue here in Boston. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk about Iran with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the threats the president is making. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you're a GBH member, you can stream your favorite PBS shows on your schedule with GBH Passport. If you're already a member, just register online today, or become a member and sign up instantly at gbh.org/passport.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug. Rugs and the people who know them. And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Houston Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio on GBH. We're going to be here tomorrow and Friday. Thank you very much. With the mayor on the 28th on Friday, and the governor also on the 28th. The governor's first, 11 to noon, and the mayor is second from noon to 1. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. And as we said to you, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to take your calls on this deadline that is less than 8 hours away. We're also going to give you a bit of an update on the situation at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. But first, we're joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the great reporting project all over the map. Hello there, John.
Hello. I would say happy Tuesday, but it's more of an anxious Tuesday.
Well,
it is
an anxious Tuesday. And John, we just spoke with a federal judge, and I asked her the question about whether Trump's latest threat to blow up a whole civilization, as he put it, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. Of course, he's talking about Iran, whether that would be a war crime. And she answered me to say, Marjorie, you're missing the whole point here. We shouldn't be talking about whether this is a war crime. We should be talking about the insanity and lunacy of a president of the United States threatening to blow up an entire civilization. I'm not going to ask you if the president is insane, but I am going to ask whether we are kind of missing the boat in our news coverage of this. I mean, I hope he's kidding, but who knows?
I think you have to cover more boats at the same time, I guess, is the best way I could describe it, using that analogy anyway, in the sense that, number one, let's be clear, the president has made, not quite in this language, and over the weekend there was profanity involved in it, and now it's wipe out a whole civilization as opposed to wipe out, all the infrastructure and the power plants. So this whole civilization is people and culture. That's at least how I would take it, as opposed to bridges and infrastructure and things that many say would be war crimes if you're taking out civilian, electricity and civilian infrastructure that keeps the society going. There would be a debate about that. So I think you have to. How long have we been having this conversation about do you take Trump literally or not? But you have to follow what he says, and then you have to follow how he says it, I guess would be the way to say it. And look, I don't have words anymore to describe that. We have every Tuesday have conversations that we've never had before. We every Tuesday have conversations about an American president that we have no context for, because no American president has ever talked like this. He talks like them when they, when the Ayatollahs talk about wiping out Israel and wiping them off the map and destroying the civilization and killing the Jews and wiping them out. We call that extremist, reprehensible, unacceptable behavior. And we say people who talk like that have no place in global society. Well, it's our president talking like that right now.
Well, what you just said really struck a chord. We hear death to America, death to Israel. This is essentially him proclaiming death to Iran this morning. I'm going to read, by the way, we haven't read it during this show. We've only read the first half of this post from Trump this morning. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change, which I was not aware of, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows, he says. John, another question we have to ask you all the time, which is almost embarrassing at this stage. When a president threatens to wipe out a whole civilization in X number of hours with a specific deadline, a rational person might think that Congress might actually talk about that threat and what it might mean for the people they represent. Is there any interest on the part of the Republican leader of the House or the Senate to do anything, to say anything, to convene anything, to talk about this?
Not yet. Not yet. You have had a few more, and I don't want to overstate it, but there have been a couple more Republicans over the weekend, say in the last 72 hours or so, saying, what does he mean here? Or that sounds too far. But only a few. Only a few. And so I think, again, look, this is another deadline coming up tonight. The president, a lot of deadlines set by the president, and a lot of deadlines set with belligerent rhetoric. Again, not at this level. He keeps escalating the rhetoric and then extending the deadlines. You can go back to the middle of March on this one. And so where are we now? At some point, I hate to say this actually, because but his credibility is already an issue here, because he said this war was over and we had won. I think about 48 hours into it, and we're still fighting it. Now, again, have the United States and Israel inflicted a lot more military damage on Iran than Iran has inflicted anywhere else, whether it's on U.S. installations or its Gulf neighbors? Yes, absolutely. From a physical destruction standpoint, it's clear which parties have done more damage. But over to me means done. One to me means finished, and we're not. We're not. And we had a wonderful, dramatic, heroic rescue of an American airman, and that is to be applauded. But the fact that the plane was shot down tells you it's not over. And so the president, much of what he says simply is not true. A lot of what he says does not match the reality on the ground. And bluster has always been, hyperbole has always been part of his political weaponry, if you will. The way he speaks, he says that about campaigns. He says it about he says it about the Mexicans. He says it about the judges. He says it about the immigrants. Now he's saying it about a centuries-old society in a country highly educated, once proud country, Iran. So I start to ramble a little bit here because I'm trying to square a circle that I can't square. But the point I would make is that we go up to 8 o'clock tonight. There have been some minor attacks, or I shouldn't say minor, but there have been some attacks during the day today on some infrastructure facilities. It's more energy infrastructure facilities today. And the question is, at 8 o'clock tonight, does the president extend his deadline, change his deadline, come up with another rationale for ignoring his own deadline, or does something dramatic happen anywhere near the scale of what he's talking about, which again is language that we've just never had to process before?
Well, also something we don't see much in this country, at least. We're talking to Nancy Gertner about the 25th Amendment, which is not about to be invoked anytime soon, where vice president and cabinet members or others would determine that a president is unable to fulfill his or her duties. Has never been invoked. But also something you don't see much in this country is, as you were speaking just now, John, I'm watching your station and watching a smiling J.D. Vance shaking hands with an autocrat who has an election in 5 days in Hungary, one of Trump's idols. Trump called into the event, CNN just said. And this is for a guy who's behind in the polls, where Vance and Trump are trying to prop him up. I don't know if Netanyahu ever did this, I can't remember, but how many times do you recall a foreign leader coming to the United States 5 days before a November election and endorsing one of the candidates in that election?
Or American leader going overseas to endorse an autocrat.
Exactly. That's a better way to put it.
It is, again, this sentence doesn't mean anything anymore, but this is not normal. That sentence is now useless. I mean, it's been said so many times. But if you believe that the United States is the world-leading democracy, which has been our calling card for quite some time, one of the tenets of that is democracy is people vote, and you respect the will of the people, and you don't try to put your thumb on the scale. That doesn't mean months before the election you don't say, I like Macron or I like Margaret Thatcher.
Sure.
You schedule it. You can do it cleverly to show up 2 or 3 months before. But as you noted, Vance went there at a very important time for this administration, both domestically and internationally. It was worth the time of the vice president of the United States and U.S. taxpayers' dollars for him to go there to try to support Orban. Then Trump, the president of the United States, hours before this deadline where he's threatening to wipe out an entire civilization, his words, not mine, he takes time to call into this rally. And who is Viktor Orban? Viktor Orban is anti-free press, anti-judicial institutions, anti the checks and balances in a democracy. And guess what? This is yet another instance where who's on the same page here? Who wants Orban to win? Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
And Vladimir Putin. That's exactly right. We're talking to John King from CNN.
It's hard to keep calm. You know what I mean? It's hard to keep calm. You just feel like this is just insane. Are we moving on from this yet?
You say it's hard to keep calm. It is. If Trump follows through on this threat at 8 o'clock, it is arguably one of the most world-changing moments in the history of the planet.
We did not mention, I don't think with John, that the Iranian government has called for young people in Iran to act as human shields and stand around the oil facilities there. So I would hope that if there are children standing around oil facilities, that will stop the president if it comes to that. I can't imagine our fighter pilots I just don't think they'd do it. I don't think.
I don't know the answer to that question, and again, the fact that you raised that shouldn't be a logical question. That shouldn't be fair.
We're in the
It
crazy
is. Don't
land.
get me wrong. I'm not criticizing. You. You put on the table a very important, very legitimate question because of where we are. The fact that we are where we are is the troubling part. We don't know what's going to happen tonight. I will say that a lot of the smart analysts, when this all started, remember, Ayatollah Khomeini, who is now dead, passed. His son has taken over, although we haven't seen him as the supreme leader. Was old and said to be sick and said to be frail. And the big conversation was, and the United States has done this under a lot of previous administrations, this is not a criticism of Trump, has started to support the so-called Green Revolution and the pro-democratic forces and then always pulled back, right? The United States governments consistently, for the time I've been doing this in Washington, D.C., have encouraged the Iranians to step forward and then pulled back when it thought maybe they weren't going to make it. And so was this a chance with the now deceased Ayatollah failing? Was that moment coming? And have you taken that off the table now? We don't know what we have in place in Iran right now, because you have between the United States and the Israelis, they've taken out a lot of senior Iranian officials. A lot of the analysts are worried what you get are more radical and less experienced people. And the combination of those two things could be dangerous. Now, they might not have the military capacity for quite some time, but what does that mean? How do they handle their own people domestically? Do they crack down on them? Is that all, almost all dissent is stifled anyway, or it's allowed up to a point and then it's pushed back? So we're just, I guess it's the old Colin Powell used to say, the Pottery Barn rule.
Yeah.
If you break it, you own it. So we'll see what this deadline happens tonight, but there's a tomorrow conversation when we see what actually happens tonight. But I think because of how this has played out, on the table are 5-year questions, 10-year questions, and potentially 25 and 50-year questions about the future of Iran.
Let's stay with today for the moment. Marjorie Taylor Greene, everybody knows, former.
Can we move the immigration thing?
Go ahead.
I mean, if you want to do it quick, because I want to make sure we get this to John, because I think this is a just outrageous story. We haven't heard that much about atrocities about immigration lately. Well, there was one reported by the New York Times where this U.S. Army sergeant just got married a few days ago. His wife is what we used to call a dreamer. She came to the United States as a toddler. This is where she's lived since she was a little baby, less than 2 years old. So usually when U.S. citizens marry undocumented immigrants, their spouses become eligible for legal permanent residency. But this U.S. Army sergeant, who has been deployed to the Middle East and to Europe and is about to be deployed to go overseas to this Iran disaster, they go to the base where they're going to live, and expecting they're going to take care of, they're going to find out where they're going to live and get the whole thing all straightened out. And instead what happens is ICE officials take this woman and handcuff her and take her away and put her in a detention facility where she may be about to be deported. He's a Army sergeant who has risked his life twice for this country and is now about to go risk his life again. This has never happened, I don't think, before.
This is the case again. I've said this before. Donald Trump had a pretty broad mandate to crack down on immigration. Donald Trump had a pretty broad mandate after winning the election to go after and to raise a stink about certain states that have not been tough enough on people who are illegally in this country who repeatedly commit crimes. And are not kicked out, not deported, or at least not put behind bars. He had a very broad mandate to do that. This is not something the vast majority and even most Trump voters support, of going that far, whether it's walking into a meatpacking plant or showing up at a housing site or here, the wife or the partner of a hero who's trying to do the right thing, who was a dreamer, brought into this, too young, brought into this country by her parents or family members, not of her decision. It's just, in search of meeting a quota and keeping a high number, their immigration policy has taken them to places that even a lot of their own voters don't support. And so we've been focused on Iran, understandably so and rightly so, for the past month now. But there are a whole bunch of little pieces in this that you see in my travels that convince me that this year has the potential to be a giant year of upheaval in American politics. What's the destination? It's too soon to say. But everywhere I travel, last week when I was in North Carolina, very rural areas, a lot of Trump voters, Had a conversation with a bunch of my Trump voters from around the country the other day. We Zoomed them all in to talk to them. Even they're like, what? They have this, and they don't turn violently on him or viscerally on him, but there's a lot of like, what are we doing? And that's too far. And so how does that factor out when we get to November? There are important policy things, including tonight's deadline, to deal with beforehand. So I don't want to sound like the idiot who just wants to talk about politics and elections. But that's another great example of a thing when people read that. An American hero who keeps us safe, who risks his life, who volunteered for service because that's what everybody in the military does nowadays. Take his wife and put her in a detention center when he's about to deploy? That's nuts. I mean, that's what a lot of, even Trump voters would tell you. That's just nuts, and it's wrong, and it's not what we voted for.
Well, it's not only that it's his wife, but she's a dreamer. I mean, she was brought here as a toddler,
22
obviously.
months old.
John, I didn't know about that call or thing you had with Trump voters around the country. What else did you take away from that discussion, if you can share it with us?
They think that he's, to varying degrees, has come nowhere close to his promise on the Epstein files, for example. Some think he's part of a cover-up. Some think he's just been overwhelmed by the bureaucracy or let down by the Pam Bondis and other people that now departed Pam Bondi. Some of them, they all admit that their costs have not gone down. Some of them say he needs more time, he needs more patience. But so you just hear little pieces of it that just tell you that, I think I've said this before, Democrats are motivated. Democrats are coming out of the woodwork. We've seen that in all throughout 2025 and in every election so far in 2026. We'll see what happens in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district tonight, if you want to get to that in a second. But Democrats are coming out, and every Republican you talk to has something they're upset about or something they're down about. And so in an election year, one party's incredibly enthusiastic and the other party's Well, that's in an evenly divided country. If one party's zooming and the other party's flatlining, the math is not hard about what's going to happen.
So, John, you mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, this replacement for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know, I may have the numbers backwards, but I think this is a district that Trump won by almost 40 points. Greene won by almost 30 points. Am I right? Did I get that right? Or
That's right.
Some, okay. So I assume what people like you are looking for tonight is not a Democratic victory, but more what kind of margin does the Republican have over the Democrat? Is that what it's about?
Yes. I mean, obviously, you count the votes and you see what happens. You have two veterans running here. So in some ways, test of the first election we've had in the middle of this war. So we'll see how that plays out. This is, if the Democrat wins this race, we're past most of the deadlines, but you're going to see even more Republicans retire. Even though we're getting past the deadlines to file candidates for their replacements in many of these states. Republican retirements are pretty high. We don't talk about it because there's other things to talk about it, but they know what's coming. And they don't want to be in the minority, and they don't want to be in the minority, especially when Donald Trump is telling them to do things they don't want to do. But we look at the margins here because throughout 2025 and 2026, I'm overgeneralizing a little bit here, but Democrats have essentially performed like plus 12, plus 14, in some places plus 17, right? They've well overperformed what happened in 2024. So now you're looking at a rural district in Georgia that's reliably Republican. You have a Senate race in Georgia this year. You have a Senate race in Texas this year. You have a Senate race in North Carolina. You have Senate races and House races in places like this, right? So maybe this is not the district, but people who make the same amount of money, do the same amount of jobs, live the same kind of lifestyle in other places that matter. So if you're a guy like me, you're looking for the margins to see if even in a place like this that we shouldn't even be worried about. If it's close, that's a warning shot at the Republicans.
We should also be clear when you say, not only is this during a war, but the candidates have staked out dramatically different positions on the war, so it's sort of front and center for the voters, correct?
Right. So you have the war question, and plus, Jim, I'll tell you this. I mean, I know everybody listening to me is dealing with this. Everybody's listening. But if you live in rural America, for your rural listeners, your listeners of Western Massachusetts or might be living up in New Hampshire, you drive more.
Yeah.
When you live, you have no choice but to drive more to the office, to the grocery store, to your kid's school, to your kid's sports field, to everything else you have to do. You drive more, and so you have number one, the question of should we be in this war, and then number two, the domestic ramifications of it, which is $4.15 gallon of gas. A huge price increase just in 30 days plus. These things matter, and they matter more to working class people in rural America because they have no choice.
John, I know you're thankful that because the world is almost on fire, we don't have time to talk about the Red Sox. So you're welcome.
Yeah, the poor Red Sox.
We'll do that next week.
It's early. It's early, John. It's very early.
Go Celtics.
Good to go Celtics.
That's right.
Good to speak to you, John King.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so much.
We've been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, the man behind the great reporting project All Over the Map, and we're very grateful for his time. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to bring you another update on the Boston Symphony Orchestra's decision to remove their conductor and music director, Andres Nelsons. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, the crew of astronauts on Artemis II have now journeyed farther into the depths of space than any humans before them. Up next, it's time for the long road back to the little blue planet we call home. Slightly closer to us, in Texas, one space reporter has been tracking every moment. She joins us on the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Framingham State University, where the strength of a Commonwealth begins with access to opportunity. At FSU, students examine evidence and serve the public good. Framingham State University. Live to the truth. Learn more at framingham.edu.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We have promised you that we would continue to update you as best we can on the situation of the BSO, where a month ago yesterday, the orchestra leadership announced, management announced that they were terminating the contract of the conductor, Andres Nelsons, as of the end of Tanglewood. In the spirit of full disclosure, Marjorie and I both consider Andres a friend. We should say Andres Nelsons. We both deeply admire his work and that of the players in the orchestra. We both believe the firing, it was a mistake, but we really wanted to hear the other side and hear their articulation of the reasons for the firing, which they have not done, but we're trying to be fair.
Yeah, for the second time, we've invited Barbara Hostetter, she's chair of the board there, and Chad Smith, who runs the BSO, to talk with us about this situation. For the second time, they have declined. We also invited the head of the Gardner Museum, Ann Hawley, former head, I should say, of the Gardner Museum, Ann Hawley. She wrote this piece in the Globe praising Barbara Hostetter's work in transforming the Gardner, and Ann Hawley, I don't think we heard from her at all.
No, she didn't respond at all.
Okay. Okay.
And by the way, again, there are many people who come on the show with whom we disagree, but these people have decided they're not. And I want to say something. We got a lot of text yesterday about this Ann Hawley piece that Marjorie mentioned. In it, when she was describing the Barbara Hostetler-led effort to transform the Gardner, she wrote, quote, a years-long process with all constituencies invited to participate, with staff participation and community members as well. What the BSO... There was no process, no staff participation from important stakeholders, the artists, the players. So I don't really understand the relevance. And the other thing Margie and I were talking about yesterday, if the Gardner could go through this transformation without firing Hawley, why couldn't the BSO go through a transformation without firing Andres Nelsons? In short, I mean, we came away with the notion that it is sometimes worse to defend a decision badly than not to defend it at all.
Well, you know, we also had a chance to read this long analysis of the assets of the Boston Symphony. Yeah, over 13 years. And this showed that their assets have improved by about $180 million over the last 13 years. And that seemed odd to me because one of the reasons that they cited for blaming, for getting rid of Andres Nelsons was financial problems.
By the way, we would have asked them about that too, and we would ask them about that, and I assume they have an explanation. By the way, let me be clear. We return to this because the BSO is a huge and really important institution in Boston. It obviously has to move forward, heal in some fashion, but at least in our estimation, silence with an occasional statement is not the path to healing. One last thing. Others have spoken publicly about this. The musicians of the Cleveland Orchestra have put out a statement supporting Andres Nelsons and the players and criticizing the management for destroying mutual trust. So is the Pacific Symphony Players Association, the Symphony Orchestra of Bavarian Radio, the Berlin Philharmonic.
Yeah, there's more. The musician from the Chicago Symphony, Oregon, St. Louis, Toronto, the Buffalo Philharmonic, all, like, as you said, Jim, same thing. They all support the Andres Nelson's, and they are criticizing the board's decision. So it's a very weird thing.
Well, it's also weird. I mean, we had three former musicians from the BSO whose combined service was 127 years. They were with us the week before last, I think. Praising the skill and humanity of Andres Nelson's. This, in my belief, when you're essentially in the public world and you make a decision that is so controversial in so many ways, you have an obligation to speak. We'd love them to speak here. They've chosen not to. The public awaits an explanation. They are welcome, meaning Barbara Hostetler, Ann Hawley, Chad Smith, anytime, as the players remain apparently committed to standing by their man, Andres Nelson.
You feel like that one of the great institutions in the city of Boston, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which is legendary. They've won all these Grammys under Andres Nelson. He's revered all over the world. That they've screwed it all up, and it's not going to recover. That's how I feel.
Also,
about
you can't hide from the story. It's not going away. So again, we hope they'll join us. They'll be treated fairly, as everybody we hope is here. We await a response.
Okay,
What's coming up?
We're moving on. Well, we were going to be light and frothy at the end of the show today.
Not today.
But because of this threat from the president, basically to eliminate the entire civilization in Iran, we hope he doesn't mean it. He backs off a lot of these things, but it's very upsetting. We're going to talk about how you're feeling about this, how you're feeling about what's going on over in Iran. So we're going to open up the phone lines at 877-301-8970. After this quick break, I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR on 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When author Emma Straub saw a news story about a beloved 80s boy band taking an annual cruise, she knew she had found her next novel.
It was just like a bell started to ring because I knew it could be a novel. And I knew that it would bring me pleasure.
I'm Elsa Chang. The new book, American Fantasy, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Cambridge Savings Bank, where they are committed to your financial well-being, and community is at the core of everything they do. Cambridge Savings Bank, always you. More at cambridgesavings.com, member FDIC.
And White Flower Farm, a mail-order plant nursery in Connecticut, offering garden plants, growing supplies, and gifts for gardeners. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. As Marjorie just said, we generally end the show with something lighter because we just can't take 2 hours of beating ourselves over the head and beating you over the head. But it's hard not to return to the topic of the day, is the threat by the President of the United States to, quote, end a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen. It probably will. Of course, that comes after his Easter Sunday deranged message about the effing strait, as he calls it, meaning the Strait of Hormuz. We are now only 7.5 hours away from this, as Marjorie has said on several occasions. The Iranian regime is urging young people to surround power plants and essentially become human shields. Trump said yesterday, with an Easter bunny standing next to him, we're going to show that incredible photograph in a minute. If you didn't see the video, it's as surreal as anything could possibly be. Standing next to the Easter bunny, life-size, and talking about how he's going to destroy. It's real, by the way. I mean, I know it's hard that was real. How he's going to destroy, obliterate every single bridge and every single power plant in a nation of 93 million people, the vast majority of whom have done absolutely nothing wrong, or innocent civilians, but it doesn't matter to Netanyahu in Gaza, and it doesn't matter to Donald Trump in Iran. So the number is 877-301-8970. How worried are you? What's your reaction to these threats? And what would you like to see responsible, and that's a fairly small number of people, responsible political leaders do about this mess?
You know, Heather Cox Richardson is a historian at Boston College. She writes the Letters from an American column on Substack. She also has a podcast. Anyway, she's, I think, widely regarded as a huge following. She talked about this whole Easter Bunny event. Before she talked about this interview, this guy that basically follows Trump's rally. And when you actually watch his rallies from beginning to end, you realize that they're full of hate. He's lying constantly, and a lot of it is incoherent. And then she's talking about what happened on this Easter Bunny thing. We saw the picture a couple of minutes ago of the president standing next to the Easter Bunny, and there are a bunch of kids there because it's the Easter egg roll thing. He's talking about things like how he keeps talking about Iran. He's talking about how former presidents said they wish that they'd done what he's done in Iran. And of course, the 4 living presidents have said that this didn't happen at all. He keeps talking about how if it were up to me, I'd keep the oil. Then he's sitting next to these kids, they're drawing pictures. And he's signing autographs. He's telling his kids that they could sell his autograph on eBay for $25,000. And then he starts criticizing Joe Biden and saying Joe Biden was incapable of signing his name, so the aides had to follow him around with the auto pen. And the kids are going, what? I mean, this is what he's talking about with a bunch of little kids and an Easter egg roll. So, I mean, most of us would not be talking about death and destruction and taking their oil and selling our autographs for $25,000 at the Easter egg roll.
Well, you know, it's further evidence, and we're going to get to your calls, we promise, and then just take calls to the end of the show. We mentioned what Margaret Sullivan wrote in The Guardian. She cites this Mark Jacobs, an October piece he wrote about how the media is missing the biggest story there is. We've talked about this a lot. We haven't missed it. She quotes him in the Chicago Tribune saying it keeps getting worse and the mainstream media keep making the same mistakes in their coverage of the king of Crazy Town. The media need to be, this is what Jacob wrote, the media need to be writing about his mental unfitness every day until we get rid of him and save our country. I mean, in all fairness, we've been saying that for months and months. Couldn't agree more. It's a totally relevant topic, and we're talking about it. Let's take some calls. Christine in Arlington, you're first on BPR. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity and bringing this up. I'm furious and so upset. I don't want this to happen in my name. I have 2 small kids. I don't want them to grow up in a world where this is like the legacy. And I also feel really impotent, which I'm sure a lot of other people do. So I wanted to call and make a public plug for a Latin American tradition that's called the cacerolazo.
What's that?
And actually, people in D.C. were doing this to protest the federal takeover for a while. All you have to do is lean out of your window at 8 p.m. and bang a pot for 5 minutes.
Oh.
And hear your neighbors doing it and protest in a really easy way. I have 2 small kids. It's going to kind of be annoying to disrupt their bedtimes, but we hear the solidarity of other people who feel, as we do, that this can't happen. Like, the American public doesn't approve, and it's a small and easy thing to do, and I hope people do it.
So do I.
Christine, thank you very much
Thanks.
for telling us about that. I didn't know about that. And by the way, we just got a text from someone who's saying there's going to be an emergency peace rally tomorrow, 6 p.m. outside the Park Street Station on Boston Common. The Massachusetts Peace Action and the Coalition to Stop the War in Iran are going to be there. And apparently this texter says that he or she is also in agreement that we are in 25th Amendment and impeachment territory. I mean, impeachment is impossible with the Republican House and Senate.
Well,
but,
so is the 25th Amendment.
So is the 25th Amendment. But anyway, they are inclined toward, I think the president is kind of lost his marbles.
Let's go to Ann in Lincoln. Hi, Ann. Welcome.
Oh, yes. Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I'm not sure what you were just discussing there with the 25th Amendment, but that's sort of my point. At this point, we have to take him literally, and he is saying that he wants to wipe out a whole civilization tonight. And my position is now, at this point, anybody who has the power to stop him and chooses not to is a collaborator in this war crime. And that includes J.D. Vance, the whole cabinet, in terms of the 25th Amendment.
We lost you. And I agree with every word. If you don't stand up, at least to speak, you are enabling, you're collaborating with a guy who is threatening to destroy a civilization of 93 million people. Ann, thanks for the call.
Well, the other thing that's very worrying here is Pete Hegseth running the Pentagon. I mean, that's really frightening. He's saying all these very bellicose things. He seems rather obsessed with lethality and death and destruction falling from the sky. He compared the fighter pilot that was lost and, thank God, rescued after climbing up I think he had a broken ankle. He was very injured, climbed up 7,000 feet to get to a place where he could hide from the rains. Anyway, he compared that fighter pilot to Jesus Christ, which was a little odd, if you ask me. And he's saying all these crazy things, and he's running the Pentagon. So,
by the way, who canceled his press conference this morning?
He did this morning.
Yeah.
What'd you make of that?
I assume that as much as he is willing to lie and abuse people in response to any question, all the questions are going to be, what are the criteria that need to be met to avoid this at 8 o'clock? And I assume they wanted the field left to Trump exclusively to do these wild, irresponsible threats. And I'm guessing that's what it was all about. And also, the question, you asked this earlier, what does General
Kane
say? Hegseth does his thing, and he throws it to Kane. And whether you like what Kane, comparatively speaking, is a professional, but as you've raised several times in this show, and I think Nancy Gertner did too, if we didn't know, we learned from Senator Kelly and 5 other veterans who serve in Congress, if we didn't know before, that a member of the military has a right and obligation to violate an illegal order. And if this order is to essentially destroy a civilization, I would say that's a pretty illegal order. So I don't know what's going to happen on that front either.
We're getting a lot of texts from people that are talking about Vietnam, what went on in Vietnam when we destroyed whole villages and we dropped napalm, et cetera. And that's true. We did a lot of horrible things in Vietnam, but we all remember Cy Hirsch, the great journalist, uncovered the My Lai massacre and other massacres over there. And William Calley was court-martialed, I believe. Was he tried or court-martialed? I think he was court-martialed.
Sure.
The people that did those things, many of them faced the consequences of that. And you would also hope he'd learned from that as well.
We haven't said this today. Anita from Blackstone writes, Trump is talking about dropping a nuclear bomb. That is how one destroys a civilization in a way that it can't come back from. He's talking about dropping a nuclear bomb. And he does say a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought
God,
back.
I hope that's not
Again, Jackie
right.
and Haverhill, you're on the show. Welcome. Thanks for your call. Hi.
Hi. I'm beside myself.
Yeah.
I hate that this current thing that's going on today, it's so far beyond belief that we will forget what a stupid idea the actual war was in the first place. We'll be happy if he backs off from this. But even if one or more of the goals of the war might have been worthy, they weren't achievable, like fomenting a popular uprising. I mean, unless he really does want to obliterate the whole place. So I just think that we get so excited about the horrible thing. You can't even find enough adjectives for how bad this is. But that Jackie, makes us forget the beginning.
That's a really important point. Is it sort of, if we escape tonight's threat, are people going to say, thank God he didn't do what we feared he would do, and then forget the underlying issue, which is this is a war of choice that has brought horrible consequences for not only innocent people in Iran, but virtually every low and moderate income person on the planet. Jackie, that was a great call. Thank you
and
for
there's
making
fear
it.
that if we keep going after civilian targets purposely in Iran, then Iran is going to go after civilian targets in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and in these Middle Eastern countries and cause, there's these salinization plants are there so people have drinking water, and obviously people need drinking water and need those plants to make the drinking water palatable. What do you say? Potable. That's the word.
Yeah.
By the way, we have one of our staff is reminding us that Mike Prisner of the Center on Conscience and War says his organization has seen a 1,000% increase in new conscientious objectors, clients, since the start of this war, and he is booked to join us next Tuesday here at the library.
That means for people who are currently in the military,
right,
who are seeking conscientious objector status, he'll be with us then. I guess that's a partial answer to our question. Jackie, thanks for the call. 877-301-8970. Out to Lynn in Victoria. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Victoria. Hello. Sorry.
Hi. Hi. No, I'm just disgusted and horrified. I'm really horrified. And I'm thinking about the fact that we have these like planned in advance, nice protests like the one that we had a couple weeks ago. And I think, what if we take to the streets with a general strike? I mean, isn't it time for the American people to take to the streets without planning it in advance and demand his removal? That we have an amendment in our Constitution. He's so dangerous on the global level, and so that's like invoke the 25th.
You know, Victoria, I'm so glad you called. I have a lot of listeners get upset when I say that our level of protest in this country is not what it needs to be. And as you're speaking, I'm saying, is there another country where a leader who has as much military power as we do would announce that it intends to end another civilization of 93 million people, where there would be no public protest in response? And I mean, I can't imagine one. Maybe there's going to be something tonight that we don't know about. We're with you on protest. We are surely with you on invoking the 25th Amendment, and I hope one or both happen. That was an excellent call, Victoria. Thank you. How about that? I mean, can you imagine, picture in your head another country that's got a huge military. Its leader stands up after this lunatic post on Easter, does something even worse this morning, 12 hours ahead of his deadline. And the response is what? Congress doesn't convene. The people don't rise up. I mean, it's really incredible. I mean, I assume he does these things beyond the fact that I think he's seriously mentally ill, because he knows he can get away with them with no consequences. I mean, it's abhorrent.
I don't know how some of these people in Congress can look at themselves in the mirror, you know?
You know, also, and by the way, if they want to convene and then pretend that they have thought about the merits and they support what Trump is doing, don't take this seriously, he just wants to make sure the strait is open, then let them do that. But they're so damn scared of their own constituents and so scared of Trump that they can't even do that. Sarah in Springfield, hi.
Hey, you guys are making a good case for revised Constitution, because our Constitution isn't protecting us. I'm getting echo in my phone.
That happens quite regularly. Our apologies. We hear you fine. Well, Sarah, before you continue, and you should, our Constitution has a provision that would protect us if the people who have the ability to invoke it chose to use it, and that's this 25th Amendment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't have any enforcement mechanisms for a partisan party to hold its own accountable. Anyway, October 7th changed everything. Iran has been in a war of choice using proxies ever since its fundamentalist regime took over. I have people I know who fled that regime. The entire professional middle class had to leave. I don't know what the answer is. I wish we didn't have to have this particular regime in our country trying to address that state sponsor of terrorism. But this is also a religious war. And
Sarah, I got to go back to October 7th. October 7th did change lots of things. Did it create an imminent threat to the United States that you're aware of?
This war is not about a direct threat to the United States.
Well, excuse me, the President of the United States says there was an imminent threat, which is why he initiated this war. Those were his words, not mine.
Can I just say something? I don't listen to a thing that guy says.
Well,
no, listen, he got voted into office because the Democrats fumbled the ball really badly in 2004.
Sarah, he won the election. I mean, he won. I hear you, and I respect your opinion. He was duly elected here. He was duly defeated 4 years earlier, despite what he says. We hear you, and we just probably have a disagreement about what the imminent threat was to us.
Well, I think there are still people, and we get them texting today saying that it's no problem to hit military sites. Well, that's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about hitting
really
military.
saying that?
Yes, and because I think that they are people that live in this. He's a con man. He's been a con man his whole life, but millions of people have been taken in by con men, and I think many people were taken in by con men, or they didn't care that he was a con man, and they just think everything is too expensive. He's going to fix that, and obviously he hasn't done that either. But I think at this point, if you're still believing him, I don't know what to say.
Elaine in Norwell, welcome to the show. Thank you for calling.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. First-time caller.
We love that. Thank you.
And I'm in my golden years, supposedly, which is absolutely not true with what's been happening with this president. And I am so upset at what he's been saying and doing. And I want to kind of ask people to do what the previous caller had said about banging your pan at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
I will be out on my deck banging away.
I'll be banging in Cambridge, too. I hope that's not all that happens, but that's a good start. Elaine, thank you for your first call.
Well,
we appreciate it.
A couple of callers said we should all be swarming our legislature in Washington, calling Congress, telling them to do something, to get together and do something. But that's not going to happen. But I think it's a good idea to keep calling because there are people in those offices, and there are certainly people. Certainly they've got an answering machine, at least.
You know, I know how much power matters to certain people. Do you know how small Senator Thune and the Speaker of the House are, how small they are, that they are so scared of this deranged individual and so exhibiting such little concern for the future of this country and their constituents, they're too scared to even convene a session to talk about a threat from the boss, which is how they see him, to destroy a civilization. I mean, it's just, how do you live with yourself? I mean,
I don't know. You know, other people have pointed out, and someone just texted me about Paul Krugman saying this. I didn't read the Krugman column, but he was talking about Hegseth has purged a bunch of senior officers, and you wonder whether some of those that he's purged are people that weren't on board with his enthusiasm for death and destruction.
Well, who wonders?
Raining
of
from
course,
the sky.
They either support it, they had some Biden connection, or they don't support this war. I mean, I think that's fairly obvious. Beth in Worcester, hi.
Hi.
Hi. You're on.
Hello. Thank you. I'm calling tonight. I'm really horrified, and we are holding a vigil in front of City Hall in Worcester tonight at 5 o'clock.
Oh, good.
To stand in solidarity. Yeah, we're all just horrified at the life we're living at this point, and what could possibly happen tonight to 90 million people. And we invite everyone to join us in front of City Hall at 5 o'clock tonight.
5 o'clock tonight, Worcester City Hall. Beth, thank you. So an anonymous texter says, did you bang your little liberal pots and pans when Obama did the exact same thing? What did Obama do that I missed? Did he threaten to destroy a civilization, never to be rebuilt? Did I miss that? Or
I'm not sure. Maybe he didn't go
Jamie
into
just wrote
Syria.
he wore a tan suit.
We
That's
wore a
what
tan.
we didn't bang our pots.
Obama, by the way, negotiated a deal that was keeping Iran from further away from a nuclear weapon, and where inspectors could go in and look at it. It wasn't perfect. It didn't deal with the ballistic missiles. It wasn't great, but it would not have left us in this place we're in now. And what are people saying is the only way out of this? Negotiation. Negotiation. Well, we had a negotiated deal.
Well, you know
and Trump ripped it up the first day in office.
Don't you think his goal is to get back to the deal that Kerry and Obama negotiated and said it's a million times better?
Well, he said in one of his speeches, just when he was giving the speech yesterday, I predicted, Osama bin Laden. People should have listened to me. It wouldn't have happened. He talks over and over again about how he won the election, the rigged election, all these things. He goes after everybody that he is upset with, James Comey, what's her name that was the AG of Attorney General, Letitia James, and Barack Obama. He's obviously
Adam Schiff, too.
Adam Schiff, Swalwell, he's after him, all these people. So that's why he says these things about, that's why he had to rip up the nuclear deal. that Obama negotiated, and John Kerry, our former senator here from Massachusetts, was involved in.
Not involved in, led the charge. Matt from Lynn says, and we've sort of forgotten this because we're so deeply into this for so many weeks, no rationale for this war except one thing: Epstein is no longer being mentioned. And for those who poo-poo that, Jim McGovern, who I think is one of the most serious, credible people in Congress, when the congressman joined us early on in the war, said that's what this is about. And I think that was what this is about, and it's unfortunately gone well beyond that. Tom in Brighton, you got a minute. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to call and voice my support for a regime change. I think this is a crazy authoritarian religious extremist running this country with nukes that could destroy the world. Anyway, that's enough about the U.S.
Well, wait, before you go away for a second, your prayers are answered because Trump tweeted there's already been regime change. I missed it. Did you see it?
No. I'm talking about the U.S.
Oh,
I think what we're doing to Iran is terrible.
Oh, Jesus, I am a fool.
Regime change.
Well, that's a rather embarrassing way to end the show, on my part, not yours. Tom, thank you much for the call. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay. I think we're done. Are we done?
Yeah, and by the way, for people who feel frustrated, needless to say, regardless of what happens by 8 o'clock tonight, I'm quite confident we will lead tomorrow's show with an opportunity for you to talk more about today and what happens tonight. So
well, we're
please stay with
hoping
us.
that he does what he usually does, which is change
Taco.
his mind at the last. It is Taco Tuesday, Jim.
It is
so
Taco
let's
Tuesday.
hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Anyway, thank you for listening to this edition of Boston Public Radio at 89.7. Thanks to everybody who came down to see the show at the Boston Public Library. We really appreciate it. You can keep up with this 24/7 Boy of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here at the library with Pine Street Inn's Lindia Downey, talking about how federal cuts have impacted the ability to take care of homeless people around here. Animal expert Simon Montgomery will be here. That's always very cheerful, Jim. Boston Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein, also very cheerful. And we'll continue our special limited series, The Long Run, on sustainability and running. This is right before the Boston Marathon. We're going to speak this week with BAA Big Deal Scott Stover about how they're working to make the race greener, the race greener. Anyway, our crew: Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Ronan Keene. Our engineer is John LeClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff here. That would be Maddie Geyer, Angelica Marrero, Juan Jose Cadena, and our hosts at the Newsview Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to Edgar B. Hurwick III and the Curiosity Desk, which starts right after us here on 89.7 GBH, and Jared Bowden, the Culture Show, starts at 2. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow, and have a great afternoon. As best you can, I guess, this afternoon.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Davis Malm. Their tax lawyers are committed to your most taxing matters. Learn more at davismalm.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Hurwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, Last month, Boston police shot and killed Stephenson King, an unarmed black man in Mission Hill. In the immediate aftermath, a lot of people were bracing for an outcry, not dissimilar to what we saw in 2020. But the public's response has been, so far, fairly muted. Why? We'll ask one reporter who's been following the story. Then we're turning to prediction markets like Polymarket, where you can bet on anything. And we do mean anything. Why is everyone so convinced they can win there versus, say, Encore? Though I think a lot of people think they can win at Encore. And the astronauts on Artemis II are heading home after making it further than any other human. We'll get you the latest. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. President Trump is repeating his threat to Iran. He's demanding Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz to international oil shipping by 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, the U.S. will start bombing Iranian power plants and bridges. Under international law, bombing these civilian sites could be considered war crimes. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports.
On social media, Trump posted, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again," adding that he doesn't want that to happen, but it, quote, "probably will." Trump's message on the war against Iran has been mixed since the start. He previously described U.S. actions in Iran as an attempt to help Iranians from a repressive government. Third-party countries led by Pakistan continue to try to further negotiations between Iran and the United States, but no agreement has been reached. Trump said in a press conference that any deal on the table needed to include the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to ensure the passage of oil. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
The U.S. struck military targets on Karg Island early this morning. A U.S. official not authorized to speak publicly told NPR they were restrikes on targets the U.S. had hit before, not oil infrastructure. President Trump has threatened to seize control of the island, which is the center of Iran's oil industry. The war is affecting countries throughout the region. Majed El-Ansari is the spokesman for the Foreign Ministry of Qatar. He said today the war will only further drive up prices for people, and it threatens international peace and security.
There are no winners in the continuation of this war. There are only losers, and the net of losers is expanding every day as a result of the ramifications of the economic situation. But we are working with all our partners in the region and beyond to make sure that any window of opportunity is utilized.
He says if the war continues, food shortages are likely to become more widespread. The benchmark price of crude oil in the U.S. has climbed to its highest level in nearly 4 years. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on the economic fallout from the U.S. war with Iran.
The disruption of energy supplies caused by the U.S. war with Iran has pushed domestic crude oil prices to their highest level since 2022, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Gasoline prices rose another 2 cents overnight. AAA says the average price at the pump is now $4.14 a gallon. Orders for long-lasting manufactured goods fell 1.4% in the month leading up to the war. That was largely due to a sharp drop in orders for jet airplanes. Not counting transportation products, durable goods orders were up in February. And activist investor Bill Ackman wants to buy Universal Music Group. Ackman's offering $64 billion for the label, which is home to acts including Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The latest development in the Lindsay Clancy case is that she now says she'll admit to killing her 3 children in order to not do prison time. 35-year-old Clancy, a former nurse from Duxbury, is accused of fatally strangling her 3 kids and then paralyzing herself in a suicide attempt. It continues to push for 2 trials, one in which she would not contest her crime and the other to determine if she was sane at the time of the killings. Several sources report that her attorney, Kevin Reddington, wrote a filing saying that Clancy is willing to formally admit to her involvement in the killings, and if she were found mentally incompetent, she would not have to go to prison, although she could be committed to a mental institution. Clancy has claimed that she was overmedicated and suffering from severe postpartum psychosis when she committed the murders. The judge in the case has already rejected Reddington's bid to have Clancy's trial split into 2 parts. She initially pleaded not guilty. And while lawmakers on Beacon Hill work on their version of the state's fiscal 2027 budget, many communities around the Commonwealth are working their own budgets. For instance, in New Bedford, legislators they're hoping to earmark money for everything from playgrounds to addiction treatment centers. The New Bedford Light reports that Westport Representative Stephen Willett would like to see money for a new floating dock at the state boat ramp in Westport and a revamp of the playground at Desmarius Park in Fall River. And in sports, the Red Sox and the Brewers go at it again tonight. A win would be lovely. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Pew Charitable Trusts, sharing about the state of housing in America on the After the Fact podcast, available at pewtrusts.org/afterthefact, and the Doris Duke Foundation.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Hurwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Just a reminder that this Friday afternoon, the Curiosity Desk will be live at the Boston Public Library. You do not need tickets. We hope to see you down there. It is an entire afternoon of programming from GBH there. There will be BPR, there will be us, there will be the Culture Show. So come on out to the library on Friday. In the meantime, we turn our attention to a difficult, sobering story that caught a lot of attention last month. Stephenson King is the 39-year-old Dorchester man shot by Boston police in Mission Hill. Police officer Nicholas O'Malley stands accused of carrying out the fatal shooting. When the news first broke, it wasn't totally clear what sort of response King's death would have here in the greater Boston community. It seemed, at least to some, that there might be a vocal outcry 5 years out from nationwide protests over police accountability and the murder of George Floyd, still fresh in our collective consciousness. But so far, we haven't seen that kind of public reaction. Why? That is the focus of great new reporting from GBH's Trajan Warren. He's a reporter with the GBH News, Equity, and Justice Unit, and he's with me now. Trajan, thank you for making the time to come and be with us here on the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you so much, Edgar. I appreciate you guys having me.
So it's a great story, and I want to start with, how you approach a story like this. I mean, it is a subject matter that is, very sensitive. There are real-world consequences. This is a major occurrence here with an impact on a lot of people's lives. How do you even start to get into this and approach doing a story like this?
It was a little tough, personally, for me. You with every story, you want to make sure that you're telling a balanced, fair, accurate story, all those things. But in particular with this story, I didn't want it to come across as, where is the black community as far as activism and public demonstrations with this killing. But it helped a little bit when, some of the sources that I did talk to say, yeah, there haven't been as many, public demonstrations that we've seen, 6 years ago post George Floyd. So it helped that, when you speak to some of these people in the community more tapped in to hear some of the same sentiments that, the story was kind of getting at. So that helped a little bit. But even, with the racial and societal, context aside, this is still an active investigation that is being had. And you want to make sure that you're, you're navigating that as fairly and delicately as you can.
Yeah, indeed. So how did it end up playing out as you speak with a lot of different folks for this story? You have a number of sources, and, was there a consensus around, kind of one of the central questions here, which is asking whether the Black Lives Matter energy has waned since 2020, at least locally here? What did you learn?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was so much of a consensus, but I do think that there's an agreement that the level of public demonstration isn't quite the same as what it was in 2020. And now the reason for that depends on, who you speak to. So there were a few sources that I spoke to that said the main reason for that is this climate of fear from the federal government, whether that be the attacks on DEI, ICE, immigration enforcement, ramping up, social safety net programs kind of being attacked as, the reason of the black community might be a bit more hesitant to kind of come out in droves the way that it was in 2020, just given the overall federal government, societal context. But then you talk to other people who say that, there hasn't been so much of a waning of activism. It's just kind of taken a different approach. City Councilor Culpepper said that, there hasn't been so much of a lack of activism, but it's more so focused in the legislature now, for example. But then you talk to other people who say that a lot of the public demonstrations were key in, having policies such as body cam footage implemented with the Boston Police Department. So I think it wasn't so much a consensus, about, what the Black Lives Matter movement is, but definitely consensus that it's not the same as 2020.
Yeah. I mean, is there like an official Black Lives Matter Boston group, or are there other groups that have sprung up in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, that are newly minted, that have a mission, that are sort of organized and out there?
Yeah, so there is a Black Lives Matter Boston chapter. The level of how active that chapter is, I'm not quite sure. I reached out via social media. I went to their website. There wasn't any, directors or, positions listed of people that are working with this chapter. Some of the social media pages don't seem like they have that much of an active presence, especially for the Black Lives Matter Boston chapter. And I reached out via the Instagram, and I haven't heard back from anything. But there are some other community grassroots organizations. There's one in particular in Cambridge, the Black Response, that has credited the Black Lives Matter movement directly for their existence. And even they recently held an exhibit kind of celebrating the 10th, anniversary of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the work that's been done. So there are community organizations that are really tapped into this Black Lives Matter movement and continuing that work.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with GBH reporter Trajan Warren about his reporting on whether or not there's been muted activist response to the killing of Dorchester's Stephenson King by Boston police. So this is an instance where there is a police shooting that definitely happens. This man is killed, and there is, you mentioned body cam footage. There is body cam footage of this. This is footage that has not been made public. So let's talk about that and its impact on this, and what the response that we're seeing is. So first of all, has anybody, in your understanding, has anybody outside of law enforcement seen the body cam footage of
To
this?
my knowledge, no. No one outside of law enforcement has seen the footage, but there is this effort to get the footage released. So, for example, Councilor Culpepper, who I mentioned earlier, he is on the forefront of releasing this footage, but releasing it on a limited kind of basis, having, officials look at the footage, and kind of come to some kind of decision on what the next step should look like, not so much releasing it to the full public overall. And I think a lot of people have that sentiment of maybe not releasing it fully to, maybe influence potential jurors, but having other people, other stakeholders within the city government look at the footage to see exactly what happened.
One of the people you spoke with is Siddiqui Kambon. He's the director of a Boston-based Black Community Information Center. He's one of the people who is pushing for the body cam footage to be released. We have a little sound from him. Let's hear a little from Siddiqui Kambon.
An unarmed black man that was shot down in cold blood by a Boston police officer. So he is our George Floyd, because he was shot and killed unnecessarily.
That comparison to George Floyd, I think, a lot of people look at what happened with George Floyd, and the consensus, I think, among a lot of people is without the footage that we saw widely circulated of what happened in that instance, you would not have seen the public outcry that we saw. So when you're talking with folks about this, did you get a sense of whether or not the fact that this footage is not out there, do people feel this is having an impact on whether or not this is a muted response to what has happened here in Boston?
100%. The same source that you just played, Kambon, he also said that one of the reasons why there hasn't been, this large public outcry, this large mobilization of people is because there is no footage to really look at, to be outraged by. But he did say that, with the release of footage, he definitely feels there will be a large public outcry in regards to that. And then also just other people have said, it might be a bit presumptuous to have a protest or to come out and say anything against the situation when, as you said, there isn't any footage to
There's still some things that are unknown about what exactly occurred and how.
Exactly.
So, among the activist voices that you talk with political, or just voices in general, you talk with political analyst Jaquetta Van Zandt, who says that the city lacks a strong Black political movement to seek accountability. And yet you also have folks that you speak with, like Jamal Crawford, a local activist, former member of Boston Police Reform task force. He's one of those folks who say, no, there's plenty of work and activism here. He's one of those voices, not a huge fan of Black Lives Matter and some of the big protests because, I'm paraphrasing him here, but he seems to feel like they're maybe not as impactful as, working directly with trying to get policy changed. And so that feels to me like a little tension inside of like, how do we accomplish our goals even if we all agree on the goal? No, 100%. And I think it kind of goes to this, a larger conversation of communities of color aren't a monolith. So there are definitely differences of opinion within, the overall community. And so you have someone like Crawford, like you said, he has not been the biggest fan, if a fan at all, of the Black Lives Matter movement, and said that a lot of the work a lot of the protesting, it was a bit more like political theater as opposed to actual policies and recommendations that get things accomplished. So I think there is this larger conversation about Black political power in Boston that is being had behind the scenes, that even went to this city that has a Black police commissioner, a Black attorney, a Black district attorney, Black city councilors. There's still work that needs to be done to hold these Black electeds accountable, to make sure that they are helping the communities that they serve. What's changed about your understanding of this story from before you started reporting this one in particular out, and where you stand today? What did you learn along the way? What is deepened about your understanding of what's going on right now in Boston? I think it shows that there is a lot of fear, even in Boston. I think Boston is an outspoken city that has not been shy about mobilization, getting out in the streets. We just saw the No Kings protest a few weeks ago, but there definitely is a sentiment of fear and maybe even a little bit of fatigue in the community about getting out and mobilization when it comes to protesting. But also, not to say that there isn't any work going on behind the scenes or any kind of gathering or community sessions happening behind the scenes. There was a community session that happened in Roxbury, in the Linwood area where the shooting happened, where community members gathered and tried to get a better sense of why there is no body cam footage. What are some of the things that are going to be, what are some things that are going to change with the BPD's protocol on releasing body cam footage? So there is still work happening, but it just might not look the same that what we're used to from 2020. Did that surprise you, or not really? It is a little surprising. I guess I understand, just where we are in the political climate. There's a lot of things happening. The economy, DEI being attacked, ICE immigration, those a lot of these things that are happening and they're really affecting and taking a toll on people. So it makes sense why there might be a little bit of fatigue, but it was initially surprising for me. We're speaking with Trajan Warren, reporter for the GBH News and Equity and Justice Unit. Here we're talking about his reporting on the activist response to the killing of Dorchester Stephenson King by Boston police. So as we look forward, as you said, this is a story that is, still playing out in real time. Officer O'Malley has been charged with manslaughter. He has pled not guilty to that charge, but it has to go before a grand jury before it is determined whether or not this is even going to go to trial. Mm-hmm. So as you look forward with what's coming down the pike here in the weeks and months ahead, given your understanding of this now, given the reporting you've done, what are your eyes on? What are your ears on as you watch this moving forward? Well, actually, today at 2 p.m., I'll be tuning into the city council. They're having a session where they're going to bring in BPD officials, the commissioner, a lawyer from the Boston Police Department, as well as community input on what are the protocols with BPD with releasing body cam footage, and whether or not there will be some kind of limited access to the footage for the counselors and other city government officials. So I think that'll be a very interesting piece of a very interesting next chapter in this story of what exactly is going to happen ahead of this grand jury happening in May. And then beyond that, the grand jury's in May? I believe so, yeah. All right. We've been speaking with Trajan Warren, reporter with the GBH News Equity and Justice Unit. Trajan, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to your further reporting on this story as it develops. Thank you so much, Edgar. I appreciate it. Just ahead, the chair of economics at MIT explains why everyone seems to feel like prediction markets like Polymarket are a safer bet than, well, betting. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Béla Fleck. The 19-time Grammy Award winner has taken the banjo from bluegrass into jazz, classical, and far beyond, building one of the most inventive careers in American music. Now, ahead of his show at the Cabot, he joins us to talk about collaboration, musical curiosity, and the latest chapter in a career defined by restless reinvention. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
And Hammond Castle Museum, presenting Eric Pape Fantasy Illustrations featuring over 100 works by the former Boston-based Golden Age artist, with many pieces unseen for nearly a century. On view April 3rd through 26th. Museum tours available, hammondcastle.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Hey, the first Curiosity Desk live at the Boston Public Library is happening this Friday, April 10th. We will have live magic over the airwaves. If that sounds crazy, I promise it works. You can participate in person for free at the library, or you can actually participate in these magic tricks at home, believe it or not. So stay tuned for that. As for now, if this show were airing in a few more areas of the country, it might just be big enough to bet on. Literally, as in you could essentially bet on what this subject is about to be about, who the guest is, how long I'm going to talk before I introduce the guest, whether or not I was going to be wearing this jacket today. That is all thanks to the rise of prediction markets, most notably Polymarket and Kalshi. How do they work? What makes them so attractive to everybody from tech bros to political junkies to huge media companies? And why are some folks worried that we are wading into very dangerous waters? Earlier today, we caught up with John Gruber. John is, of course, the head of the economics department at MIT and a regular explainer of all sorts of complicated things like this here for us on the Curiosity Desk. Our conversation began with John on what exactly we're talking about when we talk about prediction markets.
A prediction market is essentially a market where you can bet that things will happen. Probably the closest parallel for many of us will be thinking about sports betting. There's a long tradition of sports betting on whether a team will win or how much they'll win by. Prediction markets extend that everywhere, from elections to weather events to wars to many other things. These are now big business. The largest company, Polymarket, has $22 billion a year in volume. Kalshi, which is second, makes $18 billion. So we're talking about $40 billion from the two biggest companies. So the first question is sort of what's going on and how do we think about these things?
Yeah, so one question, I mean, we've been betting on events besides sports for a long time. What makes this difference? Is it just the volume, and why do we have such a volume right now? Like, what has changed in recent months?
I think what's really changed is just the ease of betting on a wide range of things. It's really technological. That essentially technological in two sides. On the consumer side, these web-based platforms have just made it very easy to search and bet over a wide range of things. On the producer side, the growth of enormous data sets has made it easier for companies to offer odds in a wide variety of things. How do these companies work? They have a team of analysts working with hordes of data behind the scenes to essentially model what is the risk of various things. They then say, okay, based on this, we think we can make money offering these odds.
Basically put a number on it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the advances in statistics and data availability have made this easier to do, and advances in web platforms have made it easier for consumers to participate in.
So how is this not just simply gambling? I mean, what makes a prediction market different from a bet? I sort of think about it, if I'm, in a casino and I'm playing blackjack, I am making a bet, essentially a prediction on a future event, which is that you're going to turn this card over and I'm going to be happy that you turn that card over. What's the difference here?
This is a great and really hard question and a relevant question. The state of Utah is actually debating whether to ban prediction markets as gambling. I think the question I've struggled with, Edgar, is what's the line between investing and gambling? And I think the way to think about it is when you invest, you are putting money into something where there's real substance behind it.
Yeah.
And where you don't need to be smarter than the market to make money.
Okay.
When you buy a house over the long run, that house will be worth more. When you buy an index of stocks over the long run, those stocks are worth more because there's real substantive assets behind them. Gambling is when you need to know better than the market to make money.
Well,
then it's gambling.
So if I mean, that's a really interesting way to think about it. So when you say index of stocks, I hear what you're saying, which is to say that, you are spreading out the money that you are investing, and you don't have to be smarter than the market to make money on an index of stocks. Now, if I buy a single individual stock that I think is maybe going to go up, but maybe I'm not smarter than the market, maybe I make money, maybe I don't, is that gambling or is that investing?
Once again, there's no clear line. There's also, different investments are differentially risky. It is true if you buy a single stock that is not pure gambling, because on average companies in America grow, on average companies listed on stock markets survive and make money. So that is not gambling, there's a real asset there, but it's a very, very risky investment. Whereas if you buy crypto, where there's nothing really real behind it, or if you are on a prediction market, then in my mind, you're really just gambling because you're only making money if you know better than someone else. There's nothing real behind it. You're just competing with other people over something where the only way to make money is to think that you're smarter than those other people. And I would call prediction markets gambling, not investing. But I want to fully say I've struggled with this. There's a fuzzy line where investing ends and gambling begins.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with John Gruber about the widespread use of prediction markets. So what is the data? I mean, what data do we have in terms of understanding about what is happening with the money that people are either gambling or investing on these sites?
Well, another reason that leans in favor of calling gambling is most people lose. That's another feature another way to draw the line between investing and gambling is do most people win or do most people lose?
Right. Does the house always win? If the house always wins, maybe it's gambling.
It's gambling. And the house always wins in prediction markets. 60 to 80% of participants in these markets are net losers. That is 3 to 4 out of every 5 people in these markets overall are losing money. And fewer than 1 in 10 people are consistently winning money. So basically, what is happening here is that they are taking advantage of a common psychological bias we all have, which is over-optimism. We think we know more than we do, particularly when we are focused on an area, when you are obsessed with a sports team, when you are obsessed with a world event, obsessed with the kind of crypto, you think you know more than you do. The truth is you don't. Some do, but the vast majority don't, and that's why the house does win when it's gambling.
And is the idea here the house wins because if you don't know more than the house knows or whatever it is to say, the odds are specifically set at a place where in order to make is it the idea that they are setting an odds based on data or information that they have that you don't have, which means it's going to be hard to win money?
Exactly. They have brilliant teams of people with massive hordes of data that are setting this up, and they are offering things at odds where they'll make money. So you need to be smarter than them, which means either you're actually smarter or, an important issue to take up, you have inside information that they don't have.
Okay, so we also have a situation where everybody from, I guess on the one hand I understand this because, as you mentioned, sports betting is obviously a big and growing business, and sports betting is something you can do on these markets. I should say you can predict the outcome of sporting events and various things related to sporting events on these markets. And so they've made partnerships with, leagues and teams like we've seen other sports betting sites do. But we also see everybody from media companies like the Wall Street Journal, I think Substack, I think CNN also have partnerships with these markets. So what are those about?
Those are about the fact that there's a benefit that these markets deliver that other gambling markets don't, which is they can be useful aggregators of information. So take elections. Okay. Traditionally, if you want to predict what's happening in an election, you collect poll data. You then take that poll data, massage it with an underlying model, and say, this is what the public thinks about this. The problem is polls are getting harder and harder to do. Traditionally, they'd call you at home at dinner time. Folks would answer, by and large, they'd give an answer. Now no one has landlines. It's hard to find you, and people don't want to participate in polls. So the sample of people they're getting is thinner and thinner, putting more and more pressure on a model to get it right. And that leads to things like everyone thinking Hillary was going to win in 2016 when Trump won. What prediction markets do is they provide an alternative. Rather than relying on unreliable responses, they rely on what economists care about most, where folks putting their money where their mouth is. That basically where people put their money will really be what they believe, as opposed to what they might say to a pollster who's annoying them at dinner. And it turns out that prediction markets do better than raw polling numbers, and they're about as good as experts. If you compare prediction markets, just what comes out of polls for elections, they do much better. If you're getting the best processors of those polls, like Nate Silver on 538, prediction markets do about as well. And in particular, what prediction markets do better is they get they change quicker. When events happen and things are moving, they're quicker responding in terms of what's going to happen. So if Trump sends out a tweet that folks are like, oh my God, that's going to hurt him, you'll know quicker in a prediction market than it'll take a couple weeks for the polls to reflect that, whereas the prediction market might reflect that right away.
And this is despite the fact that, when if somebody's trying to do a poll and they're trying to do an accurate poll and they're actually investing in that poll, one of the things is they're trying to get a representative sample size of some sort, whether it be, across ages, across political beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. I suspect that these prediction markets are not, not necessarily that same cross-section of the population. I think that it is probably a more specific group of populations who are betting in these prediction markets, and yet the data that is giving us is just as good or better.
It's a great point, Edgar. I think that it's easier to understand this if you think about another place prediction markets do quite well, which is predicting things like what the Fed will do. Predicting economic outcomes.
Yeah.
The people in those markets are typically people who think hard about this and know a lot about this. Remember, people aren't playing unless they think they can beat the market. And those folks do have a lot of information, and they're certainly better than the typical person in the public in predicting what the Fed's going to do. And they actually do quite a good job. On things like election outcomes, I see your point. And indeed, if you compare prediction markets to expert processing of the polls, they do about the same.
Right.
But if you compare to the raw polls, they actually do better.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with John Gruber about the widespread use of prediction markets. Well, you talk about predicting things like political outcomes. You talk about quick responsiveness to the news. These sites, Polymarket in particular, I think has faced some criticism. I wouldn't say some criticism, a fair amount of criticism over a couple of times where we saw substantial bets on things like the war in Iran or military action in Venezuela, where users appeared to have had some sort of inside information and were able to have a place where they could take that information very close to the event, make a pretty large bet on something it seems like they knew was going to happen, and then made a fair amount of money. This seems like a giant potential issue. Is it? Because to me, it seems like it's a huge potential issue.
It is a huge potential issue. And, Edgar, I hope the listeners, the main thing that they'll take away from this is unless you truly are expert or you have inside information, you should not be playing in these markets. Truly expert, that's great. That's what these markets are supposed to reward. Inside information, that's illegal, and that is actually problematic. So do we think people are using inside information as opposed to just expertise to actually exploit these markets? Now, let's be clear. It's hard to tell, because it's hard to tell whether you're just smarter than the average bear or if you know something. So what do? We try two ways to try to look at this. The first is we look for statistical anomalies, basically trades which look like they're very suspiciously timed relative to what was publicly available information. And those studies suggest that there's many such suspicious trades from 2024, 2026. A study of Polymarket found more than 200,000 such suspicious trades. But probably more compelling is the clear examples. So one trader used 38 coordinated accounts with nearly perfect timing to make $2.1 million betting on the timing of U.S. military strikes in Venezuela and Iran. Okay, so consider another example. Polymarket literally had a market in will the U.S. strike Iran by February 28th. Okay, 6 newly created accounts bought yes shares hours before the strike when no one could possibly have known, who wasn't involved in the planning of that strike, that was going to happen. And they made more than $1 million. Now, you cannot prove these are insider trading without more of an investigation. And my significant hope is that there will be investigation, that things which are the investigation, because the truth is, if this is use of inside information by politicians, this, crosses the line into treason. Because basically, think about it. If you are someone who knows we're going to attack Iran, and you bet on that, and Iran sees the market suddenly spiking, Iran's going to know, someone with inside information knows we're going to attack, and Iran can get prepared for that attack. So this is really, really problematic. So in some sense, relative to standard gambling, prediction markets have one benefit, which is they might provide useful information, useful aggregations of expert opinion, but they have a big disadvantage, which is they have a chance for people to really cheat in ways which can cross the line into dangerous outcomes for our country.
And speaking of crossing lines, you also have a situation like, just in recent days, Polymarket was allowing users to bet on when the U.S. airman was going to be confirmed to be rescued. Seth Moulton here in Massachusetts came out, called it disgusting, called it a dystopian death market. Now, I guess to Polymarket's credit, they suspended trading on that and said, that shouldn't have gone up. But yet again, you have, this is a sort of a brave new world. And if there's money to be made, we see examples of, I think to a lot of people's ears and eyes, that's a crossing of a line.
Look, the lines are very vague. And once again, I'm not here to say what there should be. I'm here to say that our responsible politicians should be forming a view of what they should be. We should have ideally we'd have a constructive conversation in our country. This airman thing sounds terrible. It's not clear to me why that's worse than betting on when bombs are going to fall in Iran. It's all betting on scary outcomes. Right now we can bet on whether Trump's really going to blow up the bridges in Iran or not. That's just incredibly scary either way. So I think we need to have a legitimate social conversation about what is acceptable to bet on in predictive markets and what is not.
How is it and is it not regulated?
And what is not?
How is it and is it not regulated right now? Who oversees this, and who is setting rules, if there are rules at all, for this?
I don't believe there are a lot of rules being set for this right now. I don't think anyone's doing a very good job overseeing it. In principle, it's overseen by the Commodities Trading Commission, because it's sort of in that sphere of kind of things like trading orange juice futures is the closest thing to trading sort of prediction futures. But I don't know that they're taking a lot of aggressive actions to regulate this market. I think we need to, once again, I'm not saying what the answer is. I'm not saying we shouldn't be able to bet on certain things. I'm just saying we need to have a constructive conversation about what the rules of the road are, rather than just letting these profit-seeking companies set the rules.
Well, in a move that to me feels quite familiar to what we saw play out in recent years with social media, we've seen both Kalshi and Polymarket recently kind of come out and say, we're instituting some new guardrails, we're instituting some new surveillance tools. We're gonna put some rules in place, such as political candidates can't trade on their own campaign, and folks who are involved in a professional sports team can't trade contracts related to the sport that they play or the team that they work for. So we see them kind of coming out and saying we're going to do a little bit of self-regulation here. But as you said, we have lawsuits in certain states that are trying to say, hey, this is gambling and you can't do it here, or if you are going to do it here, you get to do it under these rules. We have politicians in Washington coming out saying, hey, we need to get some laws on the books. Where do you see this regulation conversation going over the next months, or is it going to be over the next years?
Certainly over the next years. And I think that there's two things to keep an eye on. One is the gambling regulation. It seems that if there's a state that bans sports betting, they should ban this as well. It's hard to really see how you can call sports betting gambling and this not gambling. So that's the first conversation we have to have. The second conversation is where it's happening, what's allowed. And I think it's very important. Edgar, we tend to think too black and white about this. We tend to think of, okay, we'll just set a rule and wash our hands of it. But it's both about setting the rule and enforcing that rule. We need to have tools where independent investigators can go in and say, fine, there's a rule that says political candidates can't gamble on this. Let's investigate, let's audit, and make sure they aren't. So we need to actually not just set the rules of the road, but have an effective enforcement mechanism that makes sure that those rules are being followed.
As so often is the case, sounds like it will come down to enforcement of the rules. Yes. We've been speaking with John Gruber, chair of MIT's Department of Economics, where he's also the Ford Professor of Economics. His latest book is Jumpstarting America, How Breakthrough Science Can Revive Economic Growth and the American Dream. Thank you, John, once again for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
My pleasure, Edgar.
Stay with us. Just ahead, yes, they saw parts of the moon never before seen by humans, but no, the Artemis II crew does not have a brand partnership with Nutella. 1 out of 2 ain't bad. Next up, it's all things Artemis II here on the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
Colleges are rapidly approaching a demographic cliff, with fewer traditional college-age students up for enrollment. Now some schools are rethinking how they recruit and support one growing population, their Latino students.
When I was a college student over 20 years ago now, we didn't have models like this. It was a sink or swim model. You just sort of had to figure it out. We want to take some of that guessing out of the equation.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. bostonspeakers.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Hey, as a reminder, this Friday we are live at the Boston Public Library. Did we mention live magic on the radio? We did, but we'll mention it again. We are doing live magic on the radio. No tickets or RSVP required. Come see us at the Boston Public Library in downtown Boston. Okay, the last time we spoke to our next guest, she was on site at Cape Canaveral in Florida getting ready to cover NASA's launch of Artemis II for the Houston Chronicle. In the week since, Andrea Leinfelder has continued to follow the story from Texas. She joins us now via Zoom. Andrea Leinfelder, welcome back to the Curiosity Desk. Thank you for making the time.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Great to see you. Okay, yesterday was a banner day for this mission, and we will talk about that shortly. But I want to start with the last time we talked about you, because you were saying it was very difficult to find a place to sit in the press room. You might be writing your story from the floor. Just how was the launch, and did you find a table where you could write your story?
Oh, the launch was incredible. I found a chair to the side of the wall, and I had an outlet, so chair, outlet, much better than the floor. But the launch itself was just, it was rather smooth. I mean, there were a couple of moments where everyone was like, are they going to fix this? Are they going to fix this? But I mean, it launched like 10 minutes after the window opened, and we went outside, and the lights, the solid rocket boosters, when they ignited, it was so bright. It felt like you were looking at the sun. Like I literally pulled out my sunglasses so I could get a better view of the rocket taking off. And then, you felt the vibrations and you heard the rumble, and you just watched as they climbed up, and, eventually they could no longer be seen, and everyone kind of rushed back inside to hear the rest of the mission. It only took them 8 minutes to get to space.
That's crazy. 8 minutes to get to space. So since they've been up in space, I mean, the first kind of little hiccup was the bathroom, which they got fixed pretty quickly, right? And then off and out to the moon. So far, what has really captured your attention as you've been watching this develop over the days? I mean, was it like, it seemed like for most people, it was like yesterday, it was just like yesterday was where all the good stuff was. But was there stuff that was happening before yesterday, aside from the bathroom, that caught your attention?
Well, the toilet's not totally fixed. Even yesterday, they were still using containers to go number one. So they're still kind of working on that one. Yesterday was definitely the highlight. But, as they went through the mission, it was just fun to hear from them and to see the pictures that they took from Earth. I think it was a day or two after they launched. They took this stunning photo of the Earth where you could see like the North Pole, the South Pole. You could see the northern lights around the edge. And it just... that one's of the Earth and the Moon, which is also awesome. But the one they took of just the Earth, I mean, the astronauts had been on the space station, but they hadn't been as far as they had on this mission. And so they all just kind of paused and stopped to see like the Earth from that vantage. It was truly incredible to see that picture. It's been also interesting to learn just of all the little things they have to test on this mission. They've taken manual control several times. They all say Orion handles great, but things you don't think about is they practiced CPR. So like, in a future mission, if anyone ever needed CPR, where's the best spot in the spacecraft to do that? And so there's just different things to think about. And every time they do like live video, you see them all crammed in one area, and it gives you an idea that there is not a lot of space on this capsule. So you really do have to plan things like that out.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with the Houston Chronicle space reporter Andrea Leinfelder about all things Artemis II. Let's walk through yesterday a little bit, just some of the highlights. Their day began with, speaking of people who, the very few people who have been where they have been, sort of the day begins with a recorded message from the late Jim Lovell. He, of course, played by Tom Hanks in Apollo 13, and in real life was the man who led the mission of Apollo 13. Pretty cool moment.
Yeah, he was also on Apollo 8, which is most similar to this Artemis II mission because they flew around the moon. They entered the moon orbit where Artemis II doesn't. But, our Apollo 8 was the very first time astronauts flew around the moon. And they took that iconic Earthrise image where you see like the Earth coming up over the moon. And so I think he was really called on because of his Apollo 8 ties. But NASA took some more images yesterday of like Earth set and Earthrise. And it was just, their images are fabulous. But it was really cool to hear Jim Lovell's voice, especially since he did pass away last year. So it was a nice homage.
Then a pretty poignant moment yesterday. Two craters, which my understanding is we sort of knew they were there, but they don't have names. And one of the, I think Reed Wiseman sort of made a suggestion about what they'd like to name those craters. Maybe walk us through that moment.
Yeah, it's actually Jeremy Hansen.
Oh, sorry, Jeremy Hansen. Yes.
Yes. And so, they called them relatively fresh craters. They didn't, I believe, know about them, but they're not named. Not every feature on the moon is named. So they saw these craters, and after they surpassed the Apollo 13 distance, becoming, the farthest humans from Earth, they decided it'd be a nice chance to suggest names for the craters. They suggested Integrity for the Orion spacecraft. That's they named their spacecraft Integrity. And then they also suggested Carol. Reed Wiseman's wife her name was Carol. And she died in 2020 from cancer. So that was definitely a nod to his wife there. And everyone got really emotional. It was a really beautiful moment. You could see the astronauts wiping away tears. They all kind of came into a group hug after they announced their suggestions there.
Maybe less poignant, but still capturing a lot of people's attention was the Nutella moment. What happened there?
I was listening to the live audio and I just totally missed the Nutella moment. I saw a tweet about it today. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened on the Nutella moment.
It was apparently it was, on the live stream and the live video stream, sometime right around when they broke the record or were about to, a jar of Nutella escaped the shelf accidentally and came floating across the screen. And apparently NASA went so far as to say, make sure that they put a statement out saying, no, it was not intentional. We do not have brand partnerships. It was just, it was accidentally a jar of Nutella floating in no gravity across the screen. So pretty insane moment.
That is funny. But what I like, Reed Wiseman said when they were on the far side of the moon, they all had a break because they couldn't talk to Earth. They had lots of science to do, but they took a break and they ate those Canadian maple cookies. And so I thought that was a little fun nod too, because those are delicious.
Yeah. So speaking of being on the far side of the moon, they did it. They, this is, I would imagine, for folks who really know how difficult this is, probably every moment of this mission is filled with some level of anxiety. But I think for those of us sitting on the ground, it seems like one of those is, okay, they're going to go around the far side of the moon. They're not going to have communication with the Earth for around 40 minutes. But that all happened, and it was.
Yeah. I mean, everything went pretty smoothly from what we could tell anyway. They had 40 minutes where they flew around the far side of the moon and couldn't see or couldn't hear from them. They were so busy taking science stuff. It's interesting because they had different things to observe at different parts of the moon, right? Like when they first reached the moon, it was bright daylight. And so they were looking at colors, and Oriental Basin is one that we're focused on because half of it can be seen from Earth and half of it can only be seen from the far side of the moon. So they got to see the whole thing. And it was the first time humans have ever seen that whole basin. So, they were describing colors around it. As they got farther around the far side of the moon, the long shadows made it easier to see like hills and mountains and topography. And then when they were fully on the opposite side, when it was dark, they were looking for things like flash impacts. Oh, I'm forgetting the total word, but it's like when dust or meteorites hit the moon, you could kind of see it. And I know I heard them report later during the eclipse, they saw it. But their travel on the far side of the moon, it seemed to go great. They lost communication when expected. They came back when expected. It was a nice moment to see. And they all had some beautiful comments as they left, before and after they came around the moon. They all had really nice things to say.
Speaking of that, we have a little sound here from astronaut Christina Cook. This is sharing a message to Earth after they reestablished communication after that 40-minute blackout during the crew's visit to the far side of the moon. Here's a little of that.
It is so great to hear from Earth again. To Asia, Africa, and Oceania, we are looking back at you. We hear you can look up and see the moon right now. We see you too. When we burned this burn towards the moon, I said that we do not leave Earth, but we choose it. And that is true.
And there where you sort of lost what she was saying, she said, I said we do not leave Earth, we do not leave, but we choose it. And then here's a little bit later the sort of end of those comments from Christina Cook.
But ultimately, we will always choose Earth. We will always choose each other.
Yeah, nice moment there. I mean, it seems like, on the one hand, this is a science mission and all of that stuff, but it does seem like, there is a bit of profundity there and you can't help but be caught up in it a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Throughout the whole mission, they've all been talking about their hopes to have all of humanity united just for one moment as they come around the far side of the moon, right? And it's just definitely something they keep talking about, is just uniting people. I mean, the whole world can see the moon, and it's something that, kids start screaming when they're little or pointing in books. As you get older, maybe you take it for granted, but it's always there, and it has different, symbolism for different cultures. And it's been fun hearing a lot of that come out, and just a lot of the hopes for, uniting the world around this.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with the Houston Chronicle space reporter Andrea Leinfelder about all things Artemis II. So, again, yesterday's kind of the big banner day, but there are many days left in this mission until they return home. So what happens now, and what are you looking at over the next couple of days?
Yeah, today they actually have a cool moment where they get to talk to other astronauts on the International Space Station. So I think they're really excited to kind of talk with their friends and have that moment just to maybe geek out a little, right, about being in different parts of space. So that'll be fun. And yeah, they'll keep making their path home. They'll keep testing different parts of spacecraft. And then Friday, they're going to splash down the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California.
So, one of the things that has struck me, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why I'm as surprised about it as I am, but because you could sort of understand for folks who are, in the space industry, in this business, of course they want to do what they do. But it has struck me that in listening to everybody from folks at Mission Control to folks on the ground to the astronauts themselves, there really seems to be this theme of we need to keep doing this. Now that we have kind of restarted this program, now that we have gone back to the moon after this huge length of time, more than half a century since we have sent people to the moon, there seems to be a real resolve where everybody is saying and peppering their messages with, and by the way, we need to keep coming back. Are you reading that too? Do you see that as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is actually the second Artemis mission, but it's the first one of people. So, when people are on these rockets, it really just captures a wider audience, right? It captures people more. And so this is definitely a stepping stone for future Artemis missions. It's a great moment. It's a great milestone. But, NASA wants to return humans to the surface. NASA wants to build a moon base. NASA wants to learn to live and work on the moon so that one day humans can go farther, can go to Mars. It's easier to test that technology closer to home. So there's also this race with China right now, and NASA wants to return humans to the moon before China gets there, and NASA and, U.S. politicians. So there is definitely, this is the first step this is one of the first steps in the Artemis program that is really working to make sure we don't do the Apollo program again, where we just plant flags, leave footprints, and then return. NASA wants to stay this time and learn to live and work on the moon so it can go farther.
You have been covering space and space issues in the space industry for many years for the Houston Chronicle. How does this mission, how does this stack up against all of the other stuff you've done? Has it been very different than other stories you've covered over the years?
Oh, it has been so different. Usually when they go to the space station, they're up there for like 6 months. And so you watch them launch, it's like, okay, we'll see you in 6 months, right? It's kind of more, even like the first few on the, the Boeing or the SpaceX ones, the launch was a big deal. But after launch, it was like, okay, that's the space station. Like, that's kind of what we do. But this whole mission, it's like every day is new, every day is different and exciting. There's always new stuff going on. It's been exciting, and it's been a whirlwind, honestly. I mean, I'm not even on the rocket and I'm exhausted. So I can only imagine what the astronauts, what Mission Control, whatever else is feeling right now.
All right. We've been speaking with Andrea Leinfelder, space reporter for the Houston Chronicle. By the way, you can catch Andrea in Nova's upcoming film, Return to the Moon, all about the Artemis II mission. That's coming next Wednesday, April 15th. More information at gbh.org. Andrea, thanks so much for taking the time again to be with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thanks for having me.
And now taking some time to be with us is the one and only Jared Bowen of The Culture Show. Would you go to the moon if you could? Like, if we get to the point where you can, buy a ticket to, go to the moon?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's almost nothing I wouldn't say yes to, except for bungee jumping. No desire to bungee jump.
No bungee jumping, but you would go to the moon.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's not a lot of spinning, but there probably is actually a lot of spinning when they crash down outside of San Diego, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, what's on the Culture Show today?
Béla Fleck. Ooh, 19-time Grammy Award winner.
He of the Fleck tones.
Exactly. He is of a different tone these days. He is coming to the Cabot in Beverly for a concert with the Beat Trio, harp, drums, and of course, his own instrument, the banjo.
The banjo.
So we'll talk about that sound that comes together and his upcoming partnership with Renee Fleming and Dolly Parton, which is very exciting. And then Richard Hayden, who is the horticulturalist of the High Line in New York City. That's the big park high atop the city. They used an old rail line and turned it into a park. And so he'll tell us about curating that and planting that.
Very cool.
And Virginia Pye, the novelist who has just written Marriage and Other Monuments, looking at the racial reconciliation that happened in 2020 in the wake of the George manifestations like that become very private intersections in marriages.
Another rich show coming at you from The Culture Show. That's Jared Bowen there, your way, in just a few minutes. As for us, that's it. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. There's a whole bunch of other people without whom we could not do this show. We will be back in 23 short hours. We hope you'll join us then. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Edmonia Lewis, Said in Stone, a retrospective of the 19th century Black woman sculptor. More at PEM.org. How did the powerful British Empire lose the war against a ragtag band of rebels? And what are the myths that this new nation created? Lucy Worsley investigates the American Revolution tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Of the most inventive forces in American music, taking the banjo from bluegrass roots into jazz, classical, and beyond. Before he heads to the Cabot in Beverly, the 19-time Grammy winner joins us to talk about the latest turn in a career defined by restless reinvention. Then New York's Eden, a garden that has nothing to hit but the heights. Richard Hayden, the horticulturalist of the High Line, is here to talk about how the park in the sky that rose above Manhattan transformed an old rail line into a botanical marvel and showed cities everywhere what urban green space could be. And author Virginia Pye joins us to discuss her new novel, Marriage and Other Monuments. It's a story that brings the racial reckoning of 2020 into the most intimate terrain, marriage and family. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Open the idea of what a banjo can do, moving from bluegrass to jazz to classical music, and making the instrument sound at home in all of those forms. Now he's touring with Colombian harpist Edmar Castañeda and Mexican drummer Antonio Sánchez, three virtuosos known as the Beat Trio, performing original music. Fleck is a Grammy winner whose career has ranged from Béla Fleck and the Flecktones to collaborations with Chick Corea and Abigail Washburn. He joins us ahead of the trio's April 18th performance at the Cabot in Beverly to talk about musical risk, seemingly unlikely combinations, and what happens when the banjo, harp, and drums start speaking the same language. Béla Fleck, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Jared. It's good to be here.
Well, let me ask you about how here, you three artists, these three very disparate instruments, seemingly disparate instruments, and the sounds that come together. How did it originate?
Well, sure. It starts out with the Flecktones. We kind of attract odd musicians, and Edmar Castañeda fit the bill as just, someone of our family of weirdos that play an instrument in a unique way, that are finding, a place in a jazz-adjacent world, I guess you could call it, because we're all afraid to call ourselves true jazz musicians, knowing what those really are. But so anyway, I got to know him through Future Man, actually, the drummer from the Flecktones, and then some years later, I was in India with Zakir Hussain, an incredible tabla player who we lost last year, and he had me and Edgar Meyer performing at it was a memorial for his dad, Al Araka, who was the great tabla player, before him, the ultimate tabla player before Zakir, and he brought a drummer to perform at that event, and that was Antonio Sánchez. Of course, I was a fan of his because I'd been seeing him with Pat Metheny, and I thought when he came into the band, it really provided a lot of new life for Pat's music, and I thought it was just fantastic, and that he was fantastic. And we played one song together, and I was like, whoa, this guy makes me play better.
Oh.
I like people that make me play better. It's my favorite thing. That's why I like to play with Sam Bush and Tony Rice or Victor Wooten and Future, man. They make me play better.
And what do you mean? Let me pause for just a second to ask you what you mean by that.
Yeah.
What comes out in that situation?
Right. Well, I feel like the banjo is a melodic percussion instrument, similar to maybe, vibes or steel drums or marimba, you know what I mean? It's rhythm is so fundamental to what it does that you can't escape it. So when I work with people who are masters of rhythm, my life gets really easy because I can lean on them and they can lean on me. And in bluegrass we call it a floating feeling, when the music is almost happening by itself, but you only get there by having done a lot of work on your fundamental rhythmic senses. So part of it is listening, and part of it is, not being afraid to be somewhat metronomic and make that your reference point. Not everyone wants to play that way. Like in classical music, that they have a relationship with the metronome, but they don't want the music to be metronomic, and neither do I. But it's a great basis for connection. It's a standard that we can all agree on. It's this fast. I'm either ahead of the metronome or I'm a little behind of the metronome. Those are all okay. But you have that understanding of what the little notes are doing. And that's what's so important when you're a percussionist or any kind of melodic percussion instrument player. So about doing a duo concert, and I was thrilled to be asked because I loved him, but I was a little nervous, and I said, what do you think about having a third person? And I said, I know a guy that would be really great because he could cover the bass and melody, and it would be a trio. And I like small groups. Something about that always interests me because everyone has to do so much in a small group. And he said, well, okay. So we did this session, a duo session, at a studio for a record he was making, and then Edmar came over later in the day, and we had a couple of songs to try with him, and they went like gangbusters, and it sounded like a big band, just the three of us. Like, for one thing, when the rhythm is that accurate, music pops in a certain way. And Latin music does that, bluegrass does that, Indian, whatever. If you're all in agreement about where stuff is, it can really pop, and it has a different impact on the listener. And then the other thing, there was a freedom to that we all felt that forward lean, like we all play on the front end of the metronome, pretty much, but hopefully don't speed up. Anyway, that's a long babble. But basically, it was lovely, and we decided to do more with it.
And what struck you about those sounds of those instruments coming together that people might not ordinarily think, yes, let's put these three together?
Well, for one thing, we're all percussionists. Like, we all play with a very percussive approach, and we all have a good understanding of that. So again, I'm saying the same thing again in a roundabout way, but I knew that part was going to work. I had done a duet concert at Big Ears in Knoxville a few years back, very unrehearsed, with Edmar. And I also knew he was a fantastic performer, because what I didn't know was going to happen is people went berserk for him when we did that duet concert, because it's so fun to watch him play, because it's very physical. It's like me, if I'm playing real good, I'm not moving, and he's playing real good. It's very active. The hands are flying, the instrument is flying. He's very expressive, and he's highly spontaneous. So that really is fun. It's fun to have somebody like that they can do it and I can stand still.
Had you spent much time around a harp before that?
No, only in orchestras. I try to write a part for harp when I've written some of my concertos or other pieces, but no, I really haven't. I've a little bit of Celtic harp, but not much of that either. Like with the Chieftains, when Derek Bell played Celtic harp, and I always liked it. I was curious about it. I wanted to do something with harp, but Edmar's harp is also a hybrid harp that he's kind of it's not an orchestral harp, and the main thing, as I understand it, is that with an orchestral harp, when you hit a pedal, it'll change a note a half step in one direction or the other, but it changes every octave, all of the notes, right? Not just that one note you want, maybe in the middle. Edmar has a lever system on every string, so he can decide, for instance, he wants a C in the low octave to be sharp, then the one in the high octave to be flat, to make a sharp 9 chord. You know what I mean? Things like that. So he's constantly changing the levers and finding this unique harmony as he goes, which is, I love it. And my favorite parts of the night is when he just is spontaneous and does whatever comes to him, because stuff comes to him and he finds a way to make something out of it every night. And Antonio is just a stunning soloist and a listener like crazy. He listens, he knows how. I think all that time with Pat Metheny working on how to build a long Pat Metheny solo has benefited me because he knows how to listen to me and help me. Again, he makes me play better.
Well, you must be having a wild time out on the road then, not knowing necessarily where you're going to go each night. Of course, you have the foundation, and I'm sure you have a set list, but then to see where it goes, where the energy, where the moment brings you all.
Yeah, I mean, we have made one record, so we have this one set of repertoire. But a lot like when I played with Chick Corea, that material is different every night, and we strive to make it different every night. We find new places to take it every night, and that's the game. If we're playing well and we've come off stage and we all did things differently, then we're all proud of ourselves. So we're never trying to find the formula and stick to it with this music. But the basis is nice and strong. I believe in showing up with a structure. I'm not brave enough to show up and free improvise for an audience for 2 hours. I want a structure. I want some songs. I want some melodies. I want some things that I know I can deliver to the audience that are going to be solid musical things to build on. And then I want to let Pandora's box open up and see what comes to us and how we can make it fresh and spontaneous, often based on the energy of the room, the way it sounds to us from the stage, the energy of the people, all that kind of stuff. And every concert should be different from the other. In fact, the better you played a certain song, you almost wish you could not play it the next night. If you did it great last night, you want to find a way to not get stuck trying to do what you did last night and find a way to step off into the unknown.
So knowing your career, I'm wondering how much of what you just described for individual performance evenings apply to your career at large, given the extent of innovation that you have done and continue to do.
Well, that's the fun. I mean, I did learn from being around jazz musicians that part of playing spontaneously is not playing constantly. Like if I'm practicing right up to the show, which I might do if I'm playing with Chris Thiele and we have a duet that we've done. He dances around too, and I stand still. But if we play right down to the show, you're not as fresh, but you're tight. You're super tight. But with more improvised kind of music, it's almost better to get away from your instrument for a while before the show and come back to it as if it's brand new. And then stuff will come to you. And Marcus Roberts is the guy who told me, you're a practicer, right? I said, how do you know? He said, well, you're in the next room. He said, try tonight not touching your instrument till the show and see what happens. Because he had to do that all the time as a pianist, in a hotel room with no piano a lot of the time. And I found I was much more spontaneous and a lot of things happen. Of course, you have to be in good musical shape for your fundamentals to still be there if you don't play. I tend to be a worrisome practicer. I'm like, I better make sure I still know how to do this thing I did yesterday just fine. I still have to touch it and make sure, and it makes me feel more confident. So it was a real leap to back off a little bit and let some unconscious stuff happen in your mind and deliver you something different from giving it a break. And that's not intuitive, but it's true.
I'm speaking with the Grammy winner Béla Fleck, who will be at the Cabot in Beverly on Saturday, April 18th with the Beat Trio. Well, it's so interesting to hear you say that. Does that mean you typically, especially if you step off the practicing and keep it a little more raw when you walk out on stage, do you come out with a bundle of nerves? Is it almost akin to stage fright?
Well, I think the trick for me, it works better after we've been on tour for several days because then your technique is all in shape. I'm not going to show up for a gig and not be practiced. I can't do it. Banjo gets away from you too fast. It's and it's like that famous Segovia quote, if I don't practice for 1 day, I know. If I don't practice for 2 days, my accompanists know. If I don't practice for 3 days, everybody knows. So I know I'm saying two opposite things here. But once you're playing every night, suppose you're playing at the Blue Note for 6 nights, which we did when we started this group. In the beginning, we were practicing all afternoon before the shows, but by the 4th day, we didn't need to anymore. It was more, now we just needed to relax and let the music sort of take us over. And that's, you have to figure out where you're at in the process. But a lot of times we'll go out and play for several weeks because, people have to come in from different countries or different places. And when we meet, we get to work and we try to work as much as we can in a short period. But it's going to be a week or two this time. And so after 2 or 3 days, it'll be, we'll be able to just sort of let it happen.
Well, because you're a man of such extraordinary innovation as we've been talking about, I also want to ask you about your upcoming project. People might remember here on the show I spoke with Renee Fleming just a couple of weeks ago when she was in town for the opera Nixon in China. You have just been collaborating with her. I shouldn't say just. I know that you've been talking about this forthcoming project for a long time, about this album. Before I ask you about it, let's play a little bit. Here's Béla Fleck and Renee Fleming performing the American folk standard In the Pines, also featuring Dolly Parton, and it's from their upcoming album, The Fiddle and the Drum.
In the pines, where the sun never shines, and we shiver when the cold wind blows.
Well, if ever there was a dream team, especially as we hear it there, this is it. Tell me about this project, which people will be able to experience beginning next month.
Yeah, this has been a long-term project for Renee. She actually loved folk music as well as jazz and all kinds of stuff. Simultaneous to loving opera and getting into that and becoming, I call her the Michael Jordan of opera.
That's
true. People that don't know, people that don't know opera know Renee Fleming the way people that don't know basketball had to see Michael Jordan. I was one of those, So she was looking to do some kind of I don't know what to call it. This started about 20 years ago, and it was now we would call it an Americana type album. I would say a bluegrass instrumentation, doing a lot of old folk music and very special old tunes. And she wanted to do something like that. And I had heard her singing with Bill Frisell on a record in her low register, and I thought, whoa, she is a different person in that register. It's like a whole different thing. And I wasn't that familiar with her opera work, But then I was in China with my wife Abigail, and we ran into her there, and she invited us to come see her perform with the symphony. And she blew my mind. I mean, I was like, holy cow, I'm just truly one of the great vocalists of all time. So when she wanted me to help her make this record, I was like, this is wild. I've always loved, female vocals anyway, ever since I was a kid, and I got into Joni Mitchell and Linda Ratsnot, some folks like to call her back then. But that was unkind. She's awesome. Emmylou Harris, folks like that. I was always very interested, even though it had seemingly nothing to do with my, banjo wacky gene. It was just an interest in beautiful, soulful music sung by a great female vocalist. That's always been interesting to me. So the idea of getting to do that was very exciting, and we messed with it back then, and we made some demos. And as I would run into her just by fluke here and there through the years, she would always say something like, "Oh, I keep thinking about that stuff. Maybe we should try to do something with it." And I'm like, "Well, whenever you're ready, let me know. I'll do it." And so finally, it came to be the time to do it, and we got together and did all those tunes and some new tunes and found a lyrical direction. We found that the songs that we were attracted to back then, I think we had 5 or 6 back then, and we're trying to figure out what story that those songs told lyrically. And it was a lot about, it was almost love and loss, and war, and things like that. So the album actually is very meaningful in that way, just that the stories almost tell a story, and the lyrics almost tell a story. Falling in love, the man goes off to war, dies, there's a child, then there's the woman by herself afterwards. It's a very old story. But and then I got the best guys I knew to play on it. So Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas, Stuart Duncan, Brian Sutton. So it ended up being, and when you say a dream team, it's pretty much the same band on everything. In fact, it is. But it is the band you want for that material.
Well, it certainly helps us all to understand the innovation when you keep this tight team and just your curiosity, which we all hear. One last quick question for you. I saw so many different numbers about the number of Grammys you have. People seem to not be sure. Do you know how many Grammys you have?
It's a little confusing. It's like either 18 or 19, and there's a couple of debates that are not important about why, but one is that there was a Latin Grammy that Chick Corea and I won, and that's not technically counted as a regular Grammy, although it is administered by the same people. So whenever I asked Chick, what do you do about that? He said, it says it's a Grammy. I call it a Grammy. It's one of my Grammys. So I did. And then some people said, no, wait a second. You don't have it. I said, but wait, Chick Corea told me. So there's that. And then there was another one where I did the title song of a compilation album that won a Grammy. But even though they sent us a notice saying we were nominated, the final Grammy only went to the producer. Which was odd, and so for a while I counted that one. I've gotten over that one. I don't count it, but it seems like 18 and a half.
Yeah,
something like that.
I think you can go with what Chick Corea has told you.
Yeah, I mean
19.
more than I deserve, and it's wonderful in one way, and in another way, it has it just means that other musicians are listening to you, and you've made some headway. It doesn't mean you did anything better than other people that didn't get that recognition. It's a certain bellwether.
Well, congratulations on all of them, the new album and the upcoming one. It's been really great to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jared. Thanks for the conversation.
Béla Fleck is a 19-time Grammy winner who has built one of the most inventive careers in American music. He performs with Edmar, Castañeda, and Antonio Sánchez, otherwise known as the Beat Trio, at the Cabot in Beverly on Saturday, April 18th. To learn more, go to the Cabot's website. Well, coming up, a tree grows in Brooklyn, but what grows in Manhattan is 1.5 miles of botanical bliss. How New York's High Line is showing other cities what's possible. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
When you get ready with GBH's Morning Edition, you start the day informed.
All eyes are on the Supreme Court today.
Ready for all the elements.
We have mostly sunny skies for today, a little breezy as well.
And relaxed, because you're covered on the issues that matter most.
The latest headline news concerning the CDC.
Get ready with us. GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hers. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7. And streaming on the GBH News app.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Central Square Theatre, presenting Breaking the Code, the story of British mathematician Alan Turing, who broke the Nazis' Enigma code only to be persecuted by his own government for his sexuality. Now through April 26th. CentralSquareTheatre.org. And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs. And Dover Rug and Home, rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is a Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The High Line is one of those rare urban spaces that changed not just a neighborhood, but the way people imagine what a city can be. More than 15 years ago, New Yorkers wrestled with what to do with an old freight rail line looming above the west side of Manhattan. They ultimately remade it as a floating landscape of grasses, trees, and places for pause. It turned industrial ruin into a park in the sky. In the process, it became one of the most influential public space projects of the last 2 decades. Richard Hayden is Senior Director of Horticulture at the High Line, where he oversees its gardens. He joins us to talk about what it takes to care for a place that is at once a park, a promenade, and a modern New York landmark. Richard Hayden, welcome to the Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Jared.
I have walked the High Line any number of times, but for people who haven't had that luxury of the park in the sky, how do you describe it?
Well, first of all, I think everybody loves a redemption story, and the High Line is the ultimate redemption because it was a hulking mass of infrastructure that had become a self-seated landscape and was basically saved by its community who saw what it could be. So it's about 1.5 miles long, 40 to 50 feet wide, 30 feet in the air, 18 inches of soil, and we have at this point, 17 years after the opening of the first section, there is an entire birch forest 30 feet tall growing. So it's a series of gardens that change, that evoke nature, and it's just a really wonderful experience.
I have about 1 billion follow-up questions. Everything you just said, trees in the sky, the soil, everything. But let me start by going back to the beginning. You just said self-seeded. And I remember years ago I read that book, The World Without Us, which tells us that even if we were to leave the planet, there would be life and plants would grow everywhere. And so that's essentially what happened with the High Line?
Well, exactly. So the last train on the High Line ran in 1980. It was a box load of frozen turkeys at Thanksgiving. And nature abhors a vacuum. And so the railroad ties disintegrated, some, seeds blew in, the birds dropped a few, and before you knew it, there was a ribbon of self-seeded green. And you didn't know it was there from street level, right? So if you lived near the High Line, and there wasn't a lot of residential buildings, but it was just this amazing, evocative garden that had sprung up, and that became the inspiration. But of course, the soil was contaminated. There was lead paint. There was asbestos from the brake pads. So everything had to be removed, remediated, and a brand new landscape was installed.
Well, I know you weren't there at the beginning, but how would you describe the place it has in New York now?
Wow. So we are one of the busiest attractions in New York City. Last year, I think we're approaching about 6 million visitors annually, and that's down from almost 8.5 million in 2019. So 6.5 million is plenty.
Yeah.
Our pathways in some spots are only 8 feet wide. But it's wonderful that people want to have this experience. And, it's a world-class garden. I think it's maybe the most important public garden of the 21st century because it changed the way we think about gardens. Pete Adolf, our designer, was really into the idea that brown is a color too, and that we need to see the beauty in decay. So we leave our plants up all winter, and he chooses plants that have great winter structure. They look good with snow on them. And so you get to experience the garden through all 4 seasons. And that's really, I think, what the High Line has made famous.
Well, it's so interesting that it spans a whole, as you said, this whole expanse of Manhattan that people can traverse. What is your sense of what people take away from being so high above the ground and experiencing all of this green, or brown in the wintertime, green around them?
I think, and the way the High Line gets used changes throughout the day. So it's magic. People say it's too busy, and I say come between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. because it's really a neighborhood place. People are commuting, children are going to school, you get people running, and so you see a lot of the same people as well. And so it really means to the community, I think it's an opportunity. We have a new section that opened that connects up to the Moynihan train station. So if you're commuting in from Pennsylvania or New Jersey points west, you can actually cross 9th Avenue and walk all the way down to the West Village, almost a mile, without ever going down to street level. And you have this view of the city from 30 feet in the air seeing this garden, but then seeing, all of these buildings and this interesting architecture that's sprung up. It's just, you don't have that view or that experience anywhere else in New York, I don't think.
What does it does to someone's physiology to be above the fray, be above all the traffic, be above, you can hear the noise, but it's a little bit more muted on the High Line.
Well, and we're having a big celebration this year called Nature in the City, and one of the benefits of the High Line, I like to say, is the support of biodiversity. And one of the species that we support are human beings, right? And they need access to nature. We need the mental health of slowing down, seeing pollinators buzzing, having a different perspective, feeling the sun, feeling the wind, seeing the grasses rustle. And that's a real benefit for human beings as well.
I'm speaking with Richard Hayden, the Senior Director of Horticulture at the High Line in New York. You're in town in Boston because you were just giving a talk last night. Speaking of residents of the High Line, yes, a lot of people, but who and what else has taken up residence since the High Line opened 17 years ago?
Well, so as I like to say, the High Line is so much more than just a pretty walk in the park. We are a wildlife habitat. So we did a study with the American Museum of Natural History a few years back with their bee experts, and we discovered 33 species of bees that are calling the High Line home. and food. 27 of those species were native, and some of them a little bit rare. So we were able to learn certain techniques of where they like to nest. They're stem nesting solitary bees, and so we have certain stems that when we do cutback, we leave them a little longer to make some room, some homes for those bees to nest in.
When we've read so much about the dearth of bees on the planet, to know that you're bringing them in, do you have a sense of how that changes the other landscapes, parks, gardens throughout Manhattan?
Well, it's funny you say that. One of the projects we're working on right now with the New York City Bird Alliance is this biodiversity district. It's a new concept. We're taking a whole section of the Lower West Side of Manhattan, bringing everybody together that's got green space, including developers who have green roofs, and talking about ways that we can collectively support biodiversity. So it's an interesting idea that all of that green space knitted together can really make a difference. And we can be, Doug Tallamy, who's a famous ecologist and has written a book, Bringing Nature Home, refers to the High Line as an important connector between wild places. And of course, we're happy to be that.
For the design, going back to that and again, how it's evolved, is there anything exotic at the High Line? Have you tried to stay only with native species? How is it orchestrated?
That's a good question. So Pete Adolf, our designer, says gardens are for people. And so he very much likes to have things that are in bloom, things that have good structure. So by species count, we have 560 different taxa of plants. Half of those, a little more than half, are native. But the biomass, if you looked at the actual biomass of all the plants, there were 75% native, because most of the trees, the big shrubs, the big sweeps of perennials and stuff are native plants. And they are more instrumental in supporting, native habitats and wildlife. But at the same time, you may not be able to find the perfect native plant that's blooming in late August. So you're going to bring in some well-behaved plants from elsewhere to kind of give a really rich human experience.
Has it changed over the last 17 years with climate change? I was just having this conversation with a friend last night at dinner that gardening here in New England, in the Boston area, is different than it was 17 years ago.
Well, absolutely. And I like to say, if you want to know what we should be planting in the face of climate chaos, and it's not just warming climate, it's more intense droughts, more intense rain events, that we can look to the plants on the High Line, because they are growing in really tough conditions and being very resilient. So, as I mentioned, just 18 inches of soil. We have more intense wind tunnels from surrounding buildings. We sometimes get reflected scorch off of glass buildings. At certain times of the year, suddenly you'll just see this big brown spatch. And so if you can be a successful plant growing in the conditions that the High Line are growing in, then those are some of the plants we should be considering to be successful in the future.
All right, I have been dying to ask you about, I can't believe I'm saying these words out loud, dying to ask you about the soil. 18 inches of soil. You began this conversation about talking about the birch grove. Mm-hmm. How do trees exist in only 18 inches of soil?
Oh my gosh. So, when I've been there 4 years now, and I did my horticulture on the West Coast, and I got there and I looked at these giant trees. So we do have, the original rails were put back into the garden bed, so they act as a weight. But I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail up in northwest Connecticut soon after I started, and there had been a windstorm, and these trees had blown over. And because of all the ledge rock in the Northeast, there's a lot of forests that are growing in just 18 inches of soil.
Yeah.
So I started sleeping well after I saw that, because we have 30-foot tall bur oak trees. We have a river birch that's probably 40 feet tall. They spread out. And, I think the great thing about the plants on the High Line is that they grow in a community. The design of the High Line was built on the idea of ecological habitats. So we have woodlands, we have grasslands, we have woodland edge, we have a wetland. And we think of them more as a community of plants, and they work together to kind of support each other.
You just mentioned being on the West Coast. I find it really fascinating that you were overseeing landscape at the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. How do you go from tar pits to the High Line?
Well, it's funny, because I used to say, if you can grow something at the tar pits, you can grow something anywhere, because literally you just never know when there's going to be an asphalt seep popping up right next to your garden. The tar pits is an amazing site. People don't know that there is the richest fossil site from the Pleistocene era, from the Ice Age, right there in the middle of New York City, and they're still pulling fossils out of that site. I have a pinch me moment. And when I saw the Highline job come up, I just thought, well, what could be more fun than working on what I think is the greatest garden in New York? And the New York Times kind of agreed with us, calling us one of the 25 must-see gardens in the world.
Well, and how has the effect been? Because if I'm remembering correctly, from the moment it opened, people were flocking there. People were so excited because it was such a dreamy notion. And yes, I might be among the people who think there are a lot of people on the Highline. Yeah. Okay, I get it. I am a morning person. I'll go there earlier next time. But how have you seen the success of the Highline resonate the world over at this point?
Well, just to remind everyone, the Highline is free to the public. And so we are a New York City park, completely funded and run and maintained by the Conservancy Friends of the Highline, who I work for. And they raise the funds, and we have a membership program, and we have some really dedicated donors who support our work. But, on a global level, the idea that the Highline is reclaimed infrastructure, that it's wildlife habitat, that it's naturalistic plantings that are ecologically maintained completely organically. I mean, these are all important things that we need to be doing in our gardens everywhere. So being able to highlight the importance of all of those aspects while still having, I think, one of the most beautiful gardens everywhere just gives us an opportunity to really make some important parts about where we should be headed with our gardens.
Has it but has it inspired other programmers, growers, governments around the world to look at spaces? It doesn't even have to be a Highline type space, but other spaces unconventional, which might be unconventional, but find the merit in growth there.
Absolutely. In fact, we have a division of the Highline called the Highline Network, and we have currently, I think, 46 different infrastructure reuse park projects around North America that we do peer-to-peer learning with. And we try to share what we've learned about fundraising, what we've learned about community engagement, what we've learned about urban ecology. And so it's just a great opportunity to kind of bring those things together. We're looking at maybe expanding globally with that as well. And
so where else are they growing?
Oh my gosh, there's a project in London right now. I can't remember. It's a bridge that they're looking to turn into a Highline. I think our designer Pete Outhoff is involved in that. That's in the works. There's the original Promenade Plantée in Paris that preceded the Highline, which is an elevated railway. I was there last year and got to experience that. Very similar, different plantings, but very much more of a neighborhood place, and seeing kids and everything like that was really a fun thing to watch.
So this is not a pick your favorite child question, although it kind of is, but what is one of your most favorite moments, experiences on the Highline?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I like to say I have a staff of 11 full-time horticulturalists, and they each have a specific zone that they maintain along the Highline. So when I choose something, it really is like choosing. I mean, I like to say that I inspire the team that takes care of the Highline. But since you asked, I grew up in Michigan. We had a little cabin in the woods in North Michigan with all the birch forest. So I think the birch woodland at the Gansevoort, at the very south end of the park, which is right in front of our headquarters, we call it our front porch, reminds me so much of growing up, running around the woods, seeing the birches and the dogwoods blooming, and I think most of the time that's probably my favorite.
One last question for you. We're constantly talking about, I'm sure this is the case in New York too, but about drought now and water shortages. How is the water managed on the Highline? I'm sure you're very resourceful there too.
It is quite a feat of engineering. We have 5 different points of connection along the Highline where we connect to city water, but because we're 30 feet in the air, we have dual pumps that have to maintain water pressure. And we have 195 irrigation valve zones throughout the park. Fortunately, we converted everything last year to a very smart online computerized system. We have real soil moisture sensors installed now that give us real-time soil moisture data. So we can be really smart about the way we're applying the water. And hopefully the pump's maintained through the drought and everybody stays hydrated.
Well, it is such an incredibly special place, and I love the fact, I don't remember the last time I was there, I was rerouted probably for the opening you were just talking about, so it's nice to know it's growing still. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's been my pleasure, Jared. Thanks so much.
Richard Hayden is the Senior Director of Horticulture at the High Line in New York, where he oversees the gardens of the 1.5-mile elevated park that welcomes about 7 million visitors a year. Again, thank you. Coming up, novelist Virginia Pye about her new book, Marriage and Other Monuments. It's an examination of how public events disrupt private lives. She's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Photographer Rania Matar remembers Lebanon as a place of war alongside beauty. She captured both in a book of photographs of Lebanese women.
One of them that's kind of laying in the flowers in the mountains, she wanted to go to her grandmother's home, which was her safe place.
What home means in wartime, plus the day's top headlines next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Pops, filling Symphony Hall with many voices and genres this May and June. Highlights include a jazz tribute, film nights, and concerts that unite the Pops with special guests. More at bostonpops.org. Support for GBH comes from you and from Cambridge School of Culinary Arts.
Through our sponsorship, we're able to participate in such events as the GBH Food and Wine Festival.
Sean Leonard, Executive Director.
A great event that puts Cambridge Culinary in front of the listeners and is really great affirmation that we're hitting the right notes and reaching our community through GBH.
To learn more, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
Find that Friday feeling early at GBH Music's Jazz Night, featuring saxophonist Ken Fields with his RSE Trio. Thursday at 5:30 at the Boston Public Library. Get a free ticket at wgbh.org/events.
Right. I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. In 2020, Richmond, Virginia became one of the country's most visible battlegrounds over the commemoration of the Confederacy. After the murder of George Floyd, protesters flooded its historic Monument Avenue, targeting and defacing statues. And a city long defined by those memorials was forced to confront what they represented and why they were still standing. Novelist Virginia Pye watched the protests on television, the eruptions of reckoning happening in the city she once called home. It became the setting and pivotal plot point in her new book, Marriage and Other Monuments. The novel follows two sisters and their marriages in a state of collapse, and asks what happens when the arguments raging through a city begin tearing through a family as well. Virginia Pye will appear for a reading and signing at Newtonville Books tomorrow at 7. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Jared. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a big fan of the show and of GBH and of all you do for the arts. It's really so appreciated.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And I so appreciated your book and where you took us in this very fraught moment in this country, something that I think we're all aware of but don't necessarily talk about, and that is how these very difficult public moments can work their way into lives. How did you land on how it has infiltrated families?
I think that is just how I see the world in a funny way. I have always noticed how societal change and moments of tension end up affecting personal change. And like, what could be more personal than marriages? I could, it just personally, I could go back to the Vietnam War and in my own family's household, the tension that brought about, the evening news, and then also what it did to our interpersonal connections. In that instance, it was between the generations, a more conservative parent and a more liberal child, my siblings and I. But in this case, it's how did 2020 affect us? And how did it affect us at that moment? And then also, how do we still carry that now? I sort of think of this novel as historical fiction of the very recent past.
I wanted to ask you about that because I'd seen you mention that. And why is it that we can only have historical fiction that allows us the long view and not the shorter view?
It's a good question. I mean, I know that I think that the Historical Novel Society, which exists and is much respected, I think that they define historical fiction as books that are novels that are written about times that are at least 50 years prior. I've heard someone else say 30 years. But in any case, it's not 6 years or 5 years in the case of this novel. But I ended up weaving so much of Southern history, Confederate history, the history of that particular city, Richmond, into this book. And so it does have that historical fiction element. But I also think something else ended up happening with this novel, which is that I feel like time and history has speeded up. I feel like every week under the current presidency and since 2020, historical unique moments have happened so that we are sort of moving faster than ever and can look back even on a few years ago and it feels like, eons ago or decades ago in a way.
Well, what was it for you to watch on television your one-time hometown in Richmond? And if I remember correctly, your son was living there at the time of the protests.
Yeah.
And you now reside here in the Boston area, but to see something that was so personal to you and what was happening, the conversations that were being had, the protests that were being had, the reconciliation that was being had.
Absolutely. Well, actually, just to clarify, I didn't really watch on TV. I was actually staying up late at night, kind of under the covers, looking at my phone and watching on Instagram and other social media platforms as there were live reporting being done by student reporters from the university there in Richmond and from others who were participating in the social justice protests. So I was really getting a street's eye view of sort of the action and the police response. And then, of course, the next day I would see on TV, you're right, I would follow up by, what actually happened last night and how did the police respond and how many people were arrested and what has the mayor now said. So I was following the news closely. And then when the Confederate monuments started to come down, I followed that very closely as well and was even able to tell friends to hurry up and go down to Monument Avenue because the big 18-wheeler truck is coming into town to take away, Stonewall Jackson today or something. I was sort of, my heart and my everything, all of me was just there in some way, involved, interested, and trying to stay on top of it. And it came out of concern. So to answer your question, it came out of worry. Our son did live just off Monument Avenue, had dear friends who were at the protests, and I had come to really care about the city. It's quite different in certain ways than here in Boston. I was actually born and raised here, but ended up living down in Richmond for close to 20 years. And I ended up loving it there and loving the city and coming to terms with its complicated history. And so it came out of, just wanting, in a way, really wanting to be there was the issue. And it was during lockdown. You couldn't go.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I could not. And I also we couldn't get our son out of there and we also couldn't go down there. So, yeah, that's how it was.
I'm speaking with the novelist Virginia Pye about her new book, Marriage and Other Monuments. You can also catch her tomorrow night at 7 at Newtonville Books. Well, this, again, you take us into families. So here we have these protests unfolding. One of your protagonists is in the midst of them, and then she's coming home, and you make us understand in this novel how the reconciliation that the city is having is also happening within these sisters and with their husbands, because it's almost midlife and they're taking stock of their lives just as the city is taking stock of history. do these events fuel midlife crises? Which I always point out, Miranda July was on the show and said, if you're midlife and not having a crisis, there's something wrong.
There you go. I think absolutely. I mean, do you remember the Great Resignation that was taking place at that time? All sorts of people, often in midlife, people who were on a career path, were following a profession or whatever, suddenly decided to chuck it and suddenly decided to do something completely like sort of their dream thing that they'd always wanted to do, whether it be travel or whether, some other field or just quitting, getting off the hamster wheel of life. And that does happen to several of my characters. So it's told in 4 main voices, which are the 2 couples, and each of them starts out in a certain place, accepting their lives. They aren't particularly in a moment of crisis, except for then very quickly we see there are some deeply troubled things in each of their 2 marriages. And so then the novel follows the 4 of them on their separate arcs, and it does lead them each to different places than where they started. And the big question is, are they going to end up together on their arcs at the end of those arcs, or are they going to end up apart? And so, that's how it follows. Yeah.
Well, you explore these marriages for all of their nuances. Maybe this is a good time to point out you're very happily married. I know your husband, actually. He's well known in the arts community.
Yep.
How did you draw on the complications of these marriages and what might separate people at the end of the day? I'm just saying what might separate people.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't want to give away too much. I don't know. You end up knowing about the difficulties that we have, even in wonderful marriages like my own. And I think that, sort of one of the takeaways from the novel is that the secrets that people have in their marriages ends up eating away at it. And it ends up causing distance or from the other person, but also when people have, in an odd way, secrets even from themselves, some way that they aren't being honest with themselves about who they are, that can eat away at them as individuals, but then also as part of a couple. And so each of these 4 characters has to have some kind of reckoning with, am I really fully myself in my life? And in some ways they have to change, and in some ways that includes the other person, and in some ways it doesn't. So I think those are the types of questions that if we remember back to COVID and Black Lives Matter, and that summer there was a lot of questioning going on, and not just about society and our troubled society, but also our personal stance in life. And so I think the novel really tries to capture that.
How does that play into the secrets that you were just talking about? Because I remember thinking about that as I read your novel, and being struck by the level of secrets that couples would keep, individuals in the marriage would keep from one another. But we know, as foreign as it may seem and as difficult as it may seem, because how can somebody harbor something so monumental and the partner never picks up on it? We know it happens.
Yeah, I think, I think one thing is people really want to have smooth lives, and they want to get along, and they really don't want disruption, most people. These are sort of middle class. None of them are super wealthy. One comes from a wealthy family but hasn't really been able to take on that mantle. And they just want to get along, essentially. And so I think what you might call it is pretense. They pretend to be happier than they ultimately are in some cases. And so in each of them has to find some way to be genuinely happy and genuinely fulfilled. But I think that question of pretense can sort of worm its way into even the best relationships. And so you have to kind of look out for that.
As I mentioned, 2 of the protagonists are sisters, and then they come together, and that's an exploration of a marriage of another, a relationship of another sort, because they have to They've been together their entire lives, and they have to figure out what that means and what they really feel about each other.
Yes, and so these two sisters happen to have grown up on a commune in Western Virginia, which this type of thing exists. They kind of got started in the 70s, and they both had interesting childhoods there, somewhat idyllic, also troubled. They had a mother who was pretty unstable in a lot of ways. And they've gone in opposite directions. One ends up being an accountant. The other ends up being a social justice activist and someone who is at every protest. And they really are as different can be. And they push each other's buttons pretty actively so that their scenes are often they have a hard time communicating right from the start, and you can tell that. And then bit by bit, the story reveals a little bit about how actually their paths show both where that comes from, their difficulty with each other, but also how they've ultimately really cared for each other all along. And so, we have to follow the story to see, are they going to work out? Is it going to work out between them as well? So in a way, there's three couples, the two marriages, and then the two sisters. Yeah.
You, the one spoiler alert I will give away, you have a really interesting kind of twist in this story, almost literally, because we're talking about a river, and this river that is the fuel for a business. This man has a business right on the river. People are floating down it and all manner of recreation, and the river may be rerouted. Interesting that we're talking about this right after the High Line and how we look at nature. I thought that was such a brilliant device to literally change the landscape, and that how then that changes everything downriver.
Yes. Sure, we can talk about it, and it won't give away too much, I don't think, in the sense that the river this is the James River, which runs through the heart of Richmond. And Richmond, when you say to people anything about Richmond, they immediately say, oh, that's such a beautiful city. And it does have beautiful historic parts, and a big part of the beauty is the river, which we enjoyed so much when we lived there. We took our kids there, and you can kayak and canoe down it, and it's just a wonderful asset to that city. And there is a moment where it seems like what you just described is going to happen. And I wanted to play around with that, and particularly to contrast it to the monuments, which are also a huge part of Richmond. They existed on the central boulevard called Monument Avenue, which went through the elegant neighborhood of the Fan district. And miraculously, in the summer of 2020, it was authorized by the city politicians, the mayor and the city council, that they would come down, finally, after decades and generations of there being talk about what should we do with these Confederate monuments. And it was because the protesters had actively pulled down one of them. They pulled down Jefferson Davis. It was amazing that with muscle and rope, they got this statue that no one ever thought could be brought down. And so I was trying to contrast how those monuments were put up, and it was thought they would be there in perpetuity. It would be there forever, and they were protected by the local government and by, Confederate sympathizers, et cetera, for so long. And then that eventually could change. And it was shocking and amazing, and people who were there in person were clearly touched by this moment. And I was touched by it from afar, and as were so many. And then you look at the river, which you think, oh, that's never going to change. But sure enough, if people mess with nature, and which is unfortunately very possible for us to do, it can actually ruin something. It could take something beautiful and wonderful and spoil it. And so I was trying to, that notion of permanence and change is a big part of the novel in each of the relationships, in the description of the city, the monuments, the river, et cetera. And so that was part of playing around with those ideas.
Well, it was fascinating for me as the reader to wade through all of that, the change and how people adapt or don't adapt. It was such an enjoyable, really enlightening read. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jared. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having all of us on, I feel like, the various artists.
It's our pleasure here. We love talking to authors. Virginia Pye's latest novel is Marriage and Other Monuments. You can catch her tomorrow night at 7 at Newtonville Books. Again, thank you and congratulations on the book.
Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library where we will continue our celebration of National Poetry Month with the inaugural Poet Laureate of Massachusetts, Reggie Gibson. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Mers. Today's engineers are Bill Piacitelli and Dave Goodman. Brad Lewis and Patrick Lally produced our YouTube live stream. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.